Tonight, we look to see how things play out in the sand. The Sandown 500, all set to go for the Major Series, and its second split for the Pacific region. Here tonight on Grid Vision. Good evening, everyone. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside me is Ben Williams, along with our producer, Austin Darby-Genre, as we get ready to go racing from iRacing's virtual Sandown International Motor Raceway. Tonight, in turn, expect to be a very intriguing night, to say the very least. A field of 30-plus drivers looking to battle for 161 laps, all with some very difficult-to-drive supercars. What could go wrong? But what can go very thrilling at a track with plenty of history? Ben.
Yes. Sorry. That's right. Yes, this track has such a long history. It was originally began construction in 1961 and it was completed the year following. Interesting feature of this track is definitely the horse racing circuit that we can see here that was installed afterwards. Some of the most famous drivers in supercar history have both won and lost here, particularly the likes of Alan Moffat and the absolute dominant Peter Brock whenever they were raced here in the 70s and 80s. Also a visit from the World Endurance Championship in 1984, which is definitely an interesting prospect considering how narrow this track tends to be.
Should be an intriguing night, to say the very least, though. Drivers in their supercars getting themselves in the midst of final preparations. Already, some of them putting thousands of laps in terms of preparation marks tonight. Your track conditions, by the way, 78 degrees Fahrenheit for tonight. 67 is the air temperature. As well, very windy around the racetrack. But in turn, expecting plenty of pit stops. At least 3 stops is the main viewpoint. Some people may go as high as 4 pit stops when it comes to the tires tonight. When it comes to the racing here, it should be intriguing here with the Major Series here on Grid Vision. But also keep in mind, this is a part of what's been a very busy past few days here on the schedule. I want some of the races coming up. Technically, Talladega is what's up next for the Global Racing League. You also have RGR coming up as well tomorrow from Darlington. Now, in regards to tonight, what are your expectations, Ben, when it comes to a racetrack like this one, but also a field like this? Keep in mind, the difference between the top split times and the second split times, just 2 seconds in pre-qualification.
That's right, yes. Sandown itself is a fairly straightforward track. It is not what I would call a technical circuit. There are many different chicanes, but predominantly this track's main features are the 2 straights on either end of the course. You can expect to see a lot of NASCAR-style draft trains going down into turn 1 and into turn 6, and we'll probably see some passing into turn 2 and turn 11. But those passing places are going to be kind of treacherous, depending on how many cars are going to be trying to fit into one corner.
We'll quickly discuss the starting grid, is what I'm trying to say. 30 drivers, standing start, less than 90 seconds to go. Jonathan Dance, the highest of those. He missed top split by 7 1/1000 of a second. Ken Leon, Wayne Taylor, Phil Otto amongst the top 4. Wade Hutchison, expect him to be quick in the top 5. McClure alongside, that it's Ryan Steele and Timothy Close. Jonathan Bean and Jerry Isaacs, the leader for the silver standings in sport, in the top 10. Amongst those, also amongst the top half of the field to keep an eye on, Bryce Roberts is currently in 15th for the starting position here tonight. Keep in mind, that's the best starting spot in the past here at this track to win from. Just all set to go. Drivers are ready. We're underway for the Sandown 500 in the Major Series. And already Wayne Taylor up the middle, jumps from 3rd to 1st to lead in the first corner. Several of the leaders missed the opening corner. Jonathan Dance able to keep it out of the grass fully, but Phil Otto gets turned from 2nd in front of the pack.
Definitely not the ideal to get turned, and there's many cars getting collected there. As we said, there weren't any safety cars. However, they might be considered, considering we have 2 stricken cars on the inside of turn 2 here.
Phil Otto from second spot, starting spot to the back. Ken Leon, who was in a very tight battle, mind you, with Sport Pro, also back in amongst those with significant damage. There is one faster pair available if necessary. Likely going to be necessary for some. But Wayne Taylor, as a result, leading by nearly 4 seconds. Mind you, one of the main talking points by some of the drivers who gave feedback from top split action tonight, even being a 2-second delta could be tricky unless you force a mistake or good strategy.
Yeah. This is very much going to turn into a follow the leader race, depending on how challenging these cars want to be towards the beginning stages. It is a long race, so definitely need to keep that strategy in mind as they go throughout the beginning laps here.
Single file between Hutchinson and Jonathan Bean as they try and sort themselves out. Keep in mind, Bean up 6. Sebastian Jackson, who's also up in this grouping, gained 10 spots as a result of the stack up. And what can you say? Sometimes you pick up free real estate, like the Fractal Velocities racing machine, third in that traffic jam.
Yeah, whenever you can capitalize on some other people's mistakes, as we're seeing a challenge for second here, it's always a good thing that you can do as the number 19 moves up into second place.
So that moves up +7 here tonight. Now keep in mind when it comes to the racetrack here tonight, expecting things to be tight, yes, but also lots of full throttle. After all, more than 60% of the lap is full throttle here. In turn, that adds that extra little bit of difficulty when you actually do have to get to the brakes. Wayne Hutchinson has just had to pit with a black flag.
Not ideal, but as we've been talking about here, this is the beginning of the race, so many things could happen in the next 159 laps. So going on here. Plenty of jockeying for position further back the field. Many cars seeming to be having some difficulty getting welled up into turn 2, or in turn 1 there, excuse me. There's definitely some damage on that 84 car as well.
Yeah, near contact, that's McLaurin, the 84 you're talking about. Damian Colty is just in front. But keep in mind, the track limit's pretty strict here. This is one of those tracks with special rules when it comes to off tracks, especially when it comes to cutting corners. That's the reason Hutchinson had to go to the pit lane and serve a stop and go for about 15 seconds. And as a result, Hutchinson 44 seconds behind the leader.
Yeah.
For the most part, things tighten up around the racetrack in the groupings. 5th all the way to 11th, 13th to 18th amongst those tight men. Let's take a look at the replays meanwhile after an eventful start and some eventful moments for others, such as the dog bear car here.
Yeah, Hutchinson was able to really capitalize, not necessarily in this corner, was able to capitalize and get through some movements. Unfortunately, that cut is going to cost him big time coming into the pits here. But again, long race, plenty of things can happen.
Meanwhile, up at the front, Wayne Taylor. His lead is starting to shrink a bit after being as high as 4.3 seconds. Jonathan Bean is quickly starting to close up. 0.6 closed up on lap 3. Already this lap, getting the gap down a little bit in the hard braking zones. Here's the onboard with the 019.
Yeah, these V8 powered supercars are able to reach up to 250 kilometers per hour or 155 miles per hour if you're more familiar with that unit of measurement. So definitely making sure to be able to be on the brakes early for those big braking zones is going to be crucial to be able to get around this racetrack.
Keep in mind, in our groupings of the track, though, some people wanting to make moves now. That's Timothy Klaus trying to make a pass on the outside. Got a little bit close with Don Parks. And near contact, Ryan Steele avoids adding more bumper damage. Timothy Klaus has to back up. But keep in mind, this is also a series with a major series where you have to be very adaptable when it comes to car types, but also track types. This could be one of the more challenging races on the schedule yet, you could argue. Especially since it's a race they've wanted on the schedule for about a year now. Now that Sandown's on the service, they can have it.
Yeah, it was very cool of iRacing to add Sandown, considering the issues that the race course has been having in real life, with it being potential of it being sold to be turned into a housing block, which would be a shame considering the history of this course.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate part of everything because it's a track with a lot of history. And remember, one of the main aspects of scanning tracks like this, and several more currently in Australia, is to preserve that history. This track, mind you, is a track where drivers like Jack Brabham, Jim Clark, Sterling Moss, Bruce McLaren, John Surtees all honored the track and raced in the first ever event, mind you. And it's a track where some of the biggest names in Australia basically made names for themselves outside of course, the race that so much talked about when it comes to the mountainsides at Mount Panorama.
Yes, the Sandown 500 for many years being the official warm-up for the Bathurst 1000. But it was unfortunately not included on the real-life supercars schedule for a couple years, but it was great to see it back a couple weeks ago.
Yes, it just hosted some real-world action once again. Part of its new generation. This is the generation prior to it. The newest generation not on the service quite yet, but in development, per rumored pipeline discussion. Take a look at some of the drivers in the midst of the battles, though. Just as Jonathan Dans. From the pole, he's been able to recover to 10th after the incident. Still left side damage. You have to be wondering what's going through Dance's head, knowing how close he was to being the last car on the starting grid in top split, compared to being right in the heart of the trouble in the first lap of the split.
With such a small margin, though, there has to be a point where it's like, okay, I just got unlucky. But definitely seeing what the difference in the split is. There was going to a replay here.
Trouble. And this is actually active as well. Sebastian Jackson is stuck against the track right now because of this. Right there. And here's the problem. That is right at the edge of the racetrack.
That it is. Very scary place to be stuck and stationary. Fortunately, though, he is facing the wrong direction, which means he has a better line of sight to the cars coming around these last couple corners. But it's going to be a challenge for him to be able to get that Ford Mustang facing back the right direction.
Keep in mind.
Very wise of him, though, to
we've
sit
had
here
trouble.
And wait. Oh, we have more trouble?
This replay still finishing up, but some drivers like Don Parks have had issues just now in live action as well. The 303 car. Timothy Klaus was also in the vicinity. Let's take a look at all this. This just happened in the final seconds of that last replay clip. And it did involve some of those like Klaus losing spots a little bit, or some time. But keep it going because this is now a two-pronged incident. You'll see where the second prong comes in about 20 seconds. There's prong one. Looks fine, right? Wait until turn one. And what happens usually when you have a car with damage who rejoins the racetrack, Ben?
Problematic inter-car contact, usually.
So we're about 20 seconds later. Here's the first corner after the issue, and welcome back.
That is unfortunate for those drivers.
Three cars go around. Don Parks getting hit. Adam Johnson amongst those with the apologies over the radio. Jonathan Dance. We jump back up to him meanwhile. And several more.
Dance continuing his recovery drive in 7th here. But right now we're focusing on our top two with Taylor and Bjorn just driving away from Isaacs back there in 3rd.
So the 019 machine continues to try and find a way to reel things around. Keep in mind, this is a driver from the pro class. Jerry Isaacs, though, he's been doing very well. After all, he needed to do well in a race like this today because we mentioned the point battles. Sports Silver, he came in as the Sports Silver points leader by 6 points. However, Shane Vickery made the top split for tonight. So there's a chance of that points differential that comes into play. Also in our news, Jerry Isaacs has decided apparently to press every single key except his actual details on his team bio.
Yes, Isaacs is going to be having this in the back of his mind as we're going through tonight's race. So he's going to want to capitalize on many positions as he can to make sure that he is getting as many points to offset his competition getting more points in the top split.
And here's the big thing, too. We mentioned Leon is amongst those in the field. He's the third place driver in the standings for that side of the points. If you look at the 37, there's a big difference on the car conditioning. This is a clean race car. This car in the 37 doesn't have a rear spoiler and is still trying to make a pass even though it looks like a normal sedan. And yes, there's no trunk.
Yeah, not ideal aerodynamic qualities happening on this number 37 car at the moment. But credit to him for trying to keep his pace going and to stay out on in their strategy as much as they can.
Had an error driver just pick up meatball flags. In fact, the first to have to be served, Don Dolson. You may have noticed just peeled down the pit lane in the 004 on your pylon. He was amongst those who picked up some contact earlier, and he's the first to take the fast repair. All that while, nowhere to go for Leon on Don Parks. Keep in mind, Leon amongst those with Mad Sim Racing. Mad Sim Racing, one of the sizable teams in this championship with representation in both the splits. Looking up front again. Looking at some of the back and forth, this involving some of those like Jonathan Dan swapping with Bryce Roberts. Roberts up to 7th in the 21.
Yeah, there's such a gaggle of cars going back from this about 5th place on back to, it looks like 11th place is still in this mix as well. Almost back to 14th place. So definitely going to be interesting to see what happens in this group of cars. We'll see if there's going to be some people who are just going to relax and just kind of chill for a little bit. Maybe not, considering we just saw the very day-glow Mustang go 2 wheels up on the curb there. See if they'll be able to do the long strategy, save their tires, and use as much fuel as possible so they can maybe stretch beyond those 40 laps.
Staying settled out here, I'd like to remind everyone coming into tonight, this race also with the pre-qualification, supported with the charity of Beyond Blue. You see the logo at the left side of your screen right now. Keep in mind, they're here for you. Your mental health is important. Some days are better than others, and we all need a helping hand from time to time. Wherever you are in your mental health journey, Beyond Blue will be here to help. Find out more information, go to beyondblue.org.au to see how you can donate to Beyond Blue. Back to the racing. Let's take a look at some replays, shall we? More trouble for one of the UDocs cars. You already see significant damage to it. That's Ronald McPherson. And again, a bad spot to get stuck.
Yes.
Very
luckily,
bad.
Yes. Looks like drivers are able to see him on track. So maybe I spoke too soon. So hopefully McPherson's able to get off the racing line and back around to the pits if needed very shortly here.
That happened on lap 9. However, that was where the contact came from Don Dolson. That's hence why we were looking towards that and why Dolson had to come to the pit lane.
Yep.
3 wide, meanwhile, up at the front, and contact still gets bumped. That Shank trying to get on by. Ronald McPherson trying to let them on by, getting pushed away. And Jonathan Dance moves his way to 6th as a result.
Yes, Dance was able to really capitalize on that position as he see him going out wide, taking 5th here on our run down to turn 6 on this back straight here.
And a whole queue of cars has now formed up. 5th on back as a result in part with all this. About 25 seconds behind the leader for the time being. Not even a quarter of the way, if not halfway to the fuel run. Speaking of those in the battles, there's Ray Partridge, longtime Majors veteran trying to get around the lap traffic. Another Majors veteran from Sector 5, Stephen Paulison, able to do the same with Patrick Stein following suit.
Yeah, something that we haven't quite discussed on tonight's broadcast so far is that there is going to be some lap traffic maneuvering that's going to have to occur. Correct me if I am wrong, Justin. Would blue flag rules be in effect in this series?
It's a good question. It depends on the class, but it isn't something really specified per se. And remember, here's a big part. When some of the open wheel lap racing came into play a couple years ago at Road America, and that was a discussion on blue flags because the lap traffic did play a factor in some of those battles. And it was clarified that it was not something to come into play. It's up to the driver's discretion, depending on the series type. Meanwhile, let's take a look at some kinetic cars, and hello! Jason McSpiron not going to be happy with that rejoin.
Yes, that is a not sure what you were thinking style of rejoin there. Unfortunately for that Dago Mustang, whose number I missed seeing.
Richard McClure.
Yes, thank you, Richard McClure. Yeah, whenever you're re-entering the racetrack, just in general, it is always better to enter parallel to the racing line rather than perpendicular.
Can say the reason he was off the track. Checkup line off the back end of Bryce Roberts, who now has a big car-shaped dent on the back of the 21. Still keep an eye on drivers like Isaacs on screen. He's been able to keep the distance solid over Roy Witherington. Witherington from Vice Motorsport.
Yeah, Worthington is just kind of chilling out behind Isaacs. He is slowly gaining time on him, but he doesn't have to worry about the cars from fifth on back for quite some time now, being roughly 11 seconds ahead of them. Whether or not that remains is yet to be seen.
Taylor, keep in mind, running in the 109.6s just at his personal best lap. Others are running in the 109s. And the 8s, 9s, and if not 110s around the racetrack. And looking around at portions of the racetrack, bumper cars are starting to form up in the mid-pack, you can argue. Because if you go to where Ronald McPherson is, for example, he just had to stop on the sand because William Fletcher and several others have been bouncing and banging off each other for 19th spot for the whole lap. Tom Parks and Ken Leon should say, have been absolutely door-banging. They've gone 3 wide around the lap traffic, and all this happened in the prior complexes, where you had at least 5 cars go off.
Yeah, it's almost difficult to keep track of how much contact was made throughout this course of the racetrack. You still have the unfortunate, almost looking like a Buick racing out there at this point.
I mean, well, technically they don't make the Holden anymore.
Technically they don't make a Holden, but it would have been a Pontiac G6 at some point, but at this point, Pontiac's been dead for almost 20 years, so it's more or less a Buick.
Well, technically it'd be what would be called a GM specialty vehicle now. What
Yes.
that is, I'm not sure. Well, that's a good question in Australian manufacturing discussions. That's not this place right now. So, in our news, lap traffic about to be reached by your race leaders. Good sign for the 019 to be able to close up a bit because Taylor is starting to back up the pace a bit now that they're within about 15 car lengths from the lap traffic. And we've seen already how tricky lap traffic has gotten today. How does it fare up for your race leaders? We're about to find out for your top 2.
Yes. Whenever I've been in this situation as a driver, I've always preferred that the driver in front of me just follows the racing line and I make their way around them. However, as long as the driver in front of me is being predictable, that's what's be something that I prefer. So hopefully we don't see too many cars just jumping off the track in order to let these cars by in a erratic manner.
By the way, Ronald McPherson has now parked his car for damage repair. And you're looking at your track map in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You may notice in that second bubble that's set up in the final complexes in the back half of the track, There's a little P in there. That means where they'll cycle once things settle for the pit stop. With the delta calculated, it's about 37.5 seconds, mind you, plus the service. The leader right now already working their way up to turn 10, up to turn 11. So you can see just how they might cycle with the pit stops, about a lap and a half or so by the time you factor things, depending on how things go here.
Yeah, as we said at the top of the broadcast, they're going to be around 40 laps. So we're about halfway through a fuel and tire run. But as we're going to a replay here, we have the number 34 Holden, I believe, yes, in the middle of this train. And fortunately, locking up his brakes and sliding back in front of the field. Nice job by the other drivers there to not collect him as he regained control of his racing vehicle.
So no contact from that. Still able to keep going away. A couple spots lost as Wade Taylor has now made his way around some of the traffic. Oh, in trouble with Colty on cue. Here's the replay because guess who just spun around again? Colty, guess who found trouble this time? Otto. There they are together.
Ooh.
Same corner, and everybody this time made contact.
Yeah, after that little bit of a half spin, Colty's tires would have not have been happy. So maybe not just taking it easy to let his tires cool down is kind of what caused this incident. Unfortunately, the other cars were just kind of there and didn't have really anywhere that they could go on this narrow circuit.
7 more bits of contact. Here's Mark Redeker. He was amongst those who slammed in. 462 is in the midst of the battle for the bronze. Floyd's one. It looks like he chose to hit the second instead of slamming Otto out of the way.
Yeah, not a lot you can do whenever there's a car in front of you and a car beside you that's going to prevent you from trying to get around the car in front of you like that.
So the lead is cycle back to 3 seconds. Taylor had seen that gap shrink to under 2.5. Weatherington as well has not been able to make a single indent, it seems, on Isaacs.
Mm-hmm.
This gap has been around 2.5 seconds, 2.7 the whole run.
Yeah, and I've been watching Dance's split times compared to these folks. Dance is getting a little bit closer to Worthington, and he's been pulling away from the 950 as well over these last couple laps.
So the pack's starting to really spread apart, with this being now the endurance factor halfway through the run. It's about 30 minutes through the action. There is a 4-hour time limit if necessary as well for tonight's festivities. Let's take a look here at one of the close battles you see on screen. This is Shank. Ryan Steele, despite all the contact, has been able to keep the car going in the top 10. Well, I like to remind folks, there is an incident limit that could come into play for many drivers. 60 incident points. Lots of drivers have decided to use all their incident points early, it seems. And more trouble on the track. Josh Mertz is falling down the pylon because he just cut his second set of corners because of brake issues in 2 laps. This time he nearly took 2 cars with him. And that was close on the back end of Parks.
Mm-hmm. Again, as you're going through these races, as your tires are wearing, your braking zones are going to be adapting and changing as your tires wear. So that's always something you got to keep aware of throughout these longer endurance races.
Someone who's been very quiet this race, Patrick Stein. No longer going to be quiet. The driver from the Into the Apex podcast spins it around from 10th. And that causes one of the kinetic cars in turn to have to go wide. And a big slide from Bryce Roberts to avoid.
Yeah, it looked like Stein actually collected the rear of that 04 car as he was going off. So hopefully that wasn't some major damage for that car. Dolson, excuse me.
Yeah, indeed. And there was some communication over the radio involved in that hearing. But for Ryan Steele, speaking of which, he's continuing to try and maintain in what's been a tricky race too well. Maintain here tonight, it seems. it can go that way sometimes. What can you say? He's once again a part of the pro class. He only put up 34 laps of qualifying. That's the lowest tally out of anybody in this split tonight. The highest, 1,058 attempts in practice and qualifying from William Fletcher.
Yes. There are several drivers who have well over 200. Several drivers have well over 100 laps prepping and qualifying for tonight's race.
And that's the thing. Preparation's key. This is a combination for the first time in series history. You want to be prepared.
Yes. For any racing, especially whenever you're coming to a course that, like Sandown, that is not as technical, but is not exactly simple either. Whenever you're doing any type of league racing like this, preparation is key and paramount in many aspects.
Keep an eye on some of the others like Brian Scrivener. He's a part of Forge. And they have a lot of representation when it comes to this respective region. Justin Morden, who's on the U.S. side, has done very well with the years. Jason Lotridge and Garen Batten have shown some good speed this year in this region. Forge, one of the long-time organizations when it comes to the Major Series, at least in the past few years, with how they've been able to build things, to say the very least. Keep in mind, they've also had good representation on the pro side. Their pro team, the gold side, second in those standings coming into tonight behind Mega. And Forge Silver looking to extend a slim margin gap over Mad Sim Racing. The gap was just over 100 points entering tonight.
Yeah, whenever you're involved in lap battles like this, particularly over a season, sometimes you can't. You just have to focus on the race that's at hand and not think about the longer point scheme. Just making sure to focus on what's in front of you and not what's going to be happening in the next round or thinking about rounds previous.
Keep an eye on Taylor. That lead down to under 2 seconds with some of the traffic. And plenty to work with. Jonathan Diggs, who's already completed pit stop service, next in line. Adam Johnson, tail end of the lead lap just in front. And Taylor seemed to be very quick on the short and mid run. This end of the run starting to see things slide a bit on those tires and swing back to Jonathan's direction.
Yeah. 40 laps is a lot of laps for these Dunlops, and being able to manage your tires is something that these drivers are going to have to be very conscious of. While there are many straights in this course, there are many slow corners that they're going to be trying to carry as much momentum in as they can, which, if they're pushing just a little bit too hard, is going to be extra tough on their tires.
Keep in mind, the fall off isn't that drastic for some drivers. For others, it's reaching up to a second. Especially with the fuel burn, the difference. There goes Jonathan Bin trying to get around one of the lap cars and Diggs.
Yeah,
and
Taylor
go ahead.
Definitely caught that lap car in not an ideal position, and Björn was able to catch him just coming onto that straight, which allowed him to catch up back just a little bit more to Taylor going through this lap traffic.
That's also the very difficult part in the equation of traffic giveth, traffic taketh. This is a track you mentioned already is very thin in the first place. You got to be able to do that right. And the problem's going to be tonight, potentially, the next pack is a Munsters battling for position. That's not going to be easy coming up here for Taylor and company.
Yeah. And they're going to have to be smart, because you might be coming up behind two cars that are battling for position, and there's just not going to be a place for you to put your car to get past them. So patience is going to be key whenever you're coming up to like the chicane of turn 2 and turn 3, or turn 11 and turn 12 for that matter.
Keeping an eye, by the way, on Wetherington, because he did pick up another half a second or so on Jeremy Isaacs, down to 1.5 seconds, in fact. That's because of, though, the traffic management off of Scribner. And the time just went the other direction in turn, with Weatherton shuffling behind. One of the main talking points I've heard, though, with the newest generation of this car class is dirty air and the impact that could come into play. What are your thoughts on that discussion point, more so when it comes to this generation and how the aero dependency is?
With this generation, it's so different to the current generation that we haven't seen come to iRacing yet, to the point that some of the series regulars, like for instance SVG, have kind of disparaged the Gen 3 car just because it is so different when it comes to downforce and other things like that. But you can also tell with just the design of these cars how much the Supercars Balance Performance team worked to get them pretty much aerodynamically equivalent, particularly with the many responses, let's call it that, to the Ford Mustang of this generation's odd proportions, so that it had similar aerodynamic qualities of these giant Holden ZBs.
In turn, this generation's cars zip around the track. A few errors like Brett Toslin has had to go off cycle for pit stops. The battle for the overall lead is down to under a second, though. Here comes more traffic. Phil Otto. Beyond is now within the drafting distance, but now Beyond has to get around the Kingsman Racing car. And now it looks like he's trying to back up the corner because he wants to make sure he times it up right with Otto, but threw away 310s, trying to pick the right spot to send it on the traffic.
Yep. As you said, traffic giveth and traffic taketh away.
And the more that he waits behind, the worse it gets. Even when you talk about the draft effect, it's not as big when you're staying lined up like we just seen there with the backup at the corner.
Yeah, most definitely. Bjorn chose a great time to just use the straight to his advantage and being able to pull out from behind this lap down car and able to use the draft he had from that to be able to pull out alongside and to complete the pass. Doesn't look like he's lost that much time to Taylor overall, but we're going to a replay of an earlier incident. What do we have here?
It's one of the kinetic cars. Speed the 99. That's Jonathan Diggs. Remember, he was the last of the lead lap for a moment. Could have been worse.
Could have been worse.
He could have missed the whole corner.
Yep. Looks like that turn 10 down to turn 11 complex just caught him out a little bit here. Back on board with Holty here. Locking up the brakes and going off into the gravel trap once again. I believe that's the same corner they've been having difficulty with throughout the race.
That's the third time he's gone off in that section. Back up to the police lead. More traffic moving out of the way. That's Josh Mertz. Down to 7/10 nearly. Beyond is having a chance now to be able to pounce. Lost time, though, as he tried to avoid the off-track. Take a quick glance at a replay, though. This is Adam Johnson as he catches up to the near similar font friend. He spins it, but doesn't hit the wall. And that was also in that same group with Otto and company we've seen earlier. He's one of the Bethel Sim Sports cars, contrary to the font.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and again, as we've been talking about, tire wear fall off is starting to become a factor. We're within 10 laps of these cars' optimal tire wear window. We're going to expect to see these leaders coming in the next 10 laps or so. We'll see if any of them try to stretch it just a little bit longer, see if they can be able to use traffic to their advantage and maybe undercut their competition.
Keep in mind, most cases, the fall of only a few tenths. Split stint differences expect to be 40 to 45 laps per stint coming into today. Keep in mind, nobody can stretch one less pit stop. No less than 3 in terms of the strategy in this race here today. Half a second the difference once again. Beyond trying to put up the first fight for Wayne Taylor of the race, Sebastian Jackson is the next car to potentially be lapped, the 20th place car. There's Jackson, and big early breaks compared to what we're seeing for the leaders. They are now within 5-6 car lengths. This could play a factor depending on where things reach here, with the window closing fast.
Yeah, Jackson is just behind 19th place car of Stein here, so I expect him to probably not fully get off the racing line because, as we talked about later, he's still very much in his own race. But we'll see how Taylor and Beyond are going to be working their way past him, coming down into turn 1 here. They're still pretty far out, so I expect them probably coming out of turn 4. And I say that as Jackson locks up coming into turn 1. Around the outside, here we go.
Able to get by, but that's closed up the gap even more so. Another slide. Taylor nearly misses the corner. Beyond takes the lead for the first time today. Our first lead change since the big start from Taylor.
Yep. Whenever you're in the situation, the pressure is going to be on, and you have to focus to make sure that you're not going to be cracking under this pressure. Now, while we've been able to see how Taylor has been the lead car coming through this traffic, we'll see how Beyond does as he is now taking the lead. And we can see 4 cars up the road from him, probably catching them within the next lap and a half.
See if Taylor's able to keep up with the pace, or if Beyond's able to start to check out here with clean air. Already 3/10 picked up since the pass.
Yeah, Taylor's tires are not going to be happy after that slight lockup that he had going into turn 4 there. So we'll see if he's going to be able to keep on the back of Beyond.
Trouble in front. Jason McSpiron's been doored off the track. The 22 car rejoins in front of your race leaders. Big checkup, and Taylor gets the worst of the 2 checkups.
Ooh, and 22 slams the door in Taylor's face.
That was from 12th position for Jason McSpiron. You see the lockup and some of the discussion. That's William Fletcher alongside of the 28.
Yep, that is just a case of too many cars in way too small of a track. While the rejoin was pretty neat and tidy, that is going to be costing Taylor a lot of time.
In turn, it cost him at the time about 3/4 tenths. However, the Hornet's Nest is not done yet. Some more traffic is now factoring in that Mark Redeker just following a lap down. However, just waiting for Redeker alone to find a spot there cost him a few tenths. Taylor just lost the time back because Redeker parked it in front of his nose. Now there's a battle in front of the leader, Patrick Stein and Richard McClure. That's the fight for about 17th position. And now Beyond trying to get the draft lined up. McClure, the slower of the 2 in the midst of the battle. There goes McClure to make it easy.
Being predictable, make sure that the leaders can get by you on a straight. Just as important as for the leaders to make good decisions, it's important as the lap cars to make them as well. Seeing our 89 car here locking up into, I believe that was turn 6. Oh, I'm sorry, it would have been turn 9, excuse me.
Yes. And you know the funny thing about a lot of these lockups, I noticed, most of the drivers that are doing all the lockups are going off the track. In final practice, drivers did have 2 hours to be able to set additional times. Very little drivers made mistakes. They hit their marks. They were able to avoid the curbing. They ran solid laps. They're running, if anything, the laps they're putting up now on the track. But the second you say it's race time, half those drivers miss the corner.
Yep. Definitely seeing the effects of the ever prevalent red mist of motorsports starting to fall over some of these drivers. Taylor still making his way through traffic. Here coming down the back straight, going up towards turn 6.
That was a little close from McClure. Now he has Patrick Stein to deal with. And it looks like Stein not going to let him by quite yet. Not the best spot to. And the waiting game is on for Taylor. Here's the problem. Through some of these entries on the back end of the corners up to make sure there's no contact, they do lose more time. Another 10th lost as a result of letting the car breathe and giving some space to the back end of the car in front.
I think Taylor might have left just a little bit too much space behind Stein. He's going to be still behind him when we get up to turn 1 here.
And mind you, there are still several battles around all this. If you're amongst those in this fight, it depends driver to driver. We've seen drivers who are fighting at the tail end of the lead lap fight aggressively to be able to fight for the position that's on track. Because there is
we got a spin.
Oh, that was one of the cars we were just keeping an eye on, gaining pace. Sebastian Jackson, and nearly rejoins in the side of one of the cars passing by.
Yep, Jackson's. We're gonna go back to replay here. Jackson. Oh wait, no, we are on board with Colt again. Unfortunately, not quite making that chicane and taking another excursion off almost at the same corner, basically finishing there at the same corner.
Colt's getting close to the limit, you'd have to think soon. Jackson, he was trying to push, just a touch bit on the curb, and right with some assistance from the back end of McClure.
Yeah, McClure really couldn't do anything there. Jackson was covering almost 75% of the circuit, so not a lot he could have done there. These curves, well, we've been watching our drivers clatter over them most of the evening. If you do not enter these, hit these curves with caution, they will pay you back for it.
It's very easy, especially on that curbing we've seen today. To snap on the corner exit, that curving, I'm referring, of course, out of turn 4.
Yes.
Let's take a look at this battle. It's for third.
Yep.
I-6 has been wheeled in by Wetherington. Wetherington, it's taken him this entire run to close up a 2.7 second gap.
And it's worth pointing out, you can see that yellow car of Dance in the background, just looming behind these two drivers. Dance still on that recovery drive after the lap 1 shenanigans that we witnessed.
Mind you, Dance is the quickest car on the track by a few tenths of a second per lap. So if Dance has no mistakes the rest of the way, it could get interesting. No moves amidst the battle for third yet. Just seems once again, gets close, has to back up, getting too close. Oh, and speaking of mistakes, we called for as long as there's no mistakes, he'll keep going, potentially make things interesting. Never mind.
Well, I believe we can say the good old commentator's curse fulfilled Dance there, unfortunately.
Have you met Lewis McGlade, your colleague at Radio Show Levon? I'm pretty sure he doesn't believe that exists.
Well, in my experience, it exists, as we just saw, unfortunately, for Dance. Luckily, though, Dance looked like he had a pretty significant lead over Shank there, so he's able to keep 5th position for now.
We just seen in that battle amongst the leaders some trouble. Still the close battle for third, but this nearly collecting the leader. Patrick Stein is the car behind, so let's check. Like Vuv. Dom Parks was the car. And keep in mind, Wayne Taylor already lost nearly 2 seconds from this alone. And then, okay.
Yeah. Yep. Again, those curbs, you got to be careful with them. While you can run over them, they will bite if you do it to too much speed. Kind of lost my train of thought there. Anyway, seeing some more battling in the mid part of this field. Going too wide here with these two hold. Oh, that's a hold and a forward. My mistake. Yep. I believe that is the 12 of Steel, and just making his way through this lap traffic. But Klaus is right there behind them, if I'm seeing that correctly.
Yes, indeed, Timothy Klaus. Klaus running exactly where he started this race, mind you, on the grid. He's amongst those in sport bronze in that conversation we touched upon a little bit. And keep in mind, he is the sport bronze point leader. With one top 5 of the season, he's doing what he needs to hold up and pick up over Mark Redeker. Redeker, keep in mind, the closest driver to him is 5 laps down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whoa.
Oh, and there's some rejoin issues with the kinetic car. And that was Ryan Steele.
Yes.
And what's going on here at this side of the track? That is right in front of the battle for third with Dom Parks again.
Yep. Going back to an earlier replay, coming down to turn 1 here. Looks like he just locked it up a little bit and ran into the gravel trap after a little bit of desync there. Looks like, yeah, not a great rejoin, but not the worst rejoin we've seen this evening so far.
Let's touch upon the brakes because that seems to be a major part of things tonight. How would you describe how you would brake with this car?
Yeah, this car is a rear-wheel drive car, front engine, so you're going to have to be cautious of making sure that you're getting the weight transfer appropriate whenever you're coming into these big braking zones. That does mean that as your tires are wearing, that you're going to make sure that you are braking just a little bit earlier than what you were at the beginning of this run. As we're seeing, believe that...
Just trying to show a bit of the feet cam, I think. That's Brett Tossel in one of the lap cars. Keep in mind.
And
go ahead.
I don't believe that iRacing has the brake foot pedal mapped for this car, which is a odd choice, but here we are.
Well, I think there's a clutch pedal in this version of the car.
There would be, yes. I believe that is the case.
Either way. That was in the midst of the lap traffic. Hey, you never know. Sometimes people look at those things at iRacing. 3 wide, Don Parks in front of them. As there goes one car, Brett Trotzelin in the Dog Bear machine.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Jumping back up to front. This is still Taylor in second. We're seeing Isaacs drive into the pits right there. I was about to say we are on lap 42 of this race so far, so we should expect to start seeing some pit cycles happening now. Isaacs electing to jump in the pits before everyone else around him to maybe be able to get that little bit of an undercut over Weatherington, who is still in the midst of lap traffic.
It might be a very smart call here with how things are going. Beyond has picked up nearly 4 seconds in the tail end of this run with the traffic too. Still a couple more laps until drivers are expected to reach the end of the fuel tank, so no change there. Wayne Taylor seems to be very tight compared to the very comfortable motions from the 0-19 in the corners.
Yeah, we saw Taylor get off to an early lead after that great launch at the beginning of the race.
Oh.
And as we're seeing Dion go wide at turn 1, I was about to say Taylor probably used a little bit more of his tires than Dion has over the course of this race, but I'm sure Dion's tires are not going to be happy after that near off-track excursion that he just about took.
That was one of the few mistakes he's made all run, though, you can argue.
Mm-hmm.
However,
most definitely.
Taylor did gain nearly a second from it. Go ahead.
Yeah, but again, we're getting to the end of the fuel and tire run here. The tires are going to be hurting. The car's going to be light because you're low on fuel, and that's going to feel like the car's going to want to carry more momentum, but the tires are just not going to be there.
See if the stop comes in. Starting to struggle with the traffic, and yes, he does.
Yep.
Very early.
Are we going to see Taylor pull in behind him? Yes, we are.
So the leaders, no, Taylor actually stays out.
Oh, nope, excuse me, I misread that completely.
I was about to say, keep in mind the brake mark for this pit entry very early. The yellow cone is before the hillside as Taylor goes a little bit wide too.
Yep, Taylor's tires have to be hurting at this point. So we'll see if this electing to go a little bit further than his competition is actually going to pay off in the long run. It looks like he doesn't have that many lap cars in front of him right now, so he might have some decently clean air to be able to make some time up over Bien.
Speaking of the service, right now the delta already more than 50 seconds in the lane alone. As more drivers like Roger Shank come on in, Beyond still taking the pit service. It's a very lengthy stop here to fill all the fuel. It is in sync with the tires, 52.7 seconds. Wayne Taylor coming around to the other end, coming in, coming out is Beyond. So the pit window for the top two, opening, closing, revolving, as most of the field seems to be stretching as far as they can.
Yeah. Taylor coming into pits right as Byung leaves, but it looks like Byung's actually come out into live traffic, so we'll see if that's going to be a hindrance to, as he brings his tires up to temperature.
And keep in mind, some drivers did mention with it being in sync with the tires, some drivers were saying they didn't see the appeal of actually short fueling the car. Keep in mind, Shank just underfueled the car on cue at 45 seconds in the pit delta. That's a 7-second gain for the 950.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be an interesting strategy call. We'll see how that plays off throughout the rest of the race as we're seeing more cars come into the pits.
Top of the racetrack. Joshua Mertz is blocking the run through turn 3 and 4. Ronald McPherson is stopped as well on the racetrack in live action. Let's take a look because this could have been much worse. At least 5-6 cars had to slow up aggressively after Mertz had this mistake. And then it gets worse. McPherson has to stop on the left side of the track. This leaves only one spot for cars to go. You better be able to be getting to that right side of the track because there's McPherson. And he doesn't even try to get around it.
I actually kind of like... Oh, boy.
I don't like that.
I don't like that. I like McPherson's move of just like, okay, I am completely out of position. I'm just going to wait. I'm already a lap down. I've already had some pretty extensive damage repair, so I'm just here for safety, for points at this point.
Oh, trouble.
As we're seeing... Oh, I believe that was the... Is that our friend Colby again?
It's Colty again.
Oh, no. Same corner.
Someday he'll learn the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, more stops. Timothy Close just about gets the lead lap. Bryce Roberts able to save an additional lap on gas, but guess who cycled to the lead? Wayne Taylor, 8 seconds less of gas.
Yeah, again, we'll see how that stretches out as we go throughout this race. Byung looks like he's back, several cars back from Taylor, just kind of stuck in lap traffic. A really fortunate place that Byung came back out onto the track after his pit stop, but by comparison, looks like Taylor has a little bit more of a clear air. So Taylor can warm up his tires.
So just a few more drivers to pit. Roberts, Isaacs, and Johnson. Then the window's complete for the first time for pit stops. 1.1 seconds the lead differential right now, and right now staying surprisingly stable despite some of the traffic. Should say about 3 seconds. Although Bryce Roberts expecting him to come on in. There goes Roberts right now on the racetrack. So Wayne Taylor cycles back to the race lead. Jonathan Bian cycling to second. Patrick Stein due to come in as well in the next moment or so. He fell a lap back. He will come into the pit lane now to cycle Jerry Isaacs inside the top 3. Wetherington amongst the top drivers on track. We'll take a quick step aside. We'll be back in just a few minutes. You're watching Grid Vision for coverage of the Major Series. Pit window 1 complete.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work, so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Welcome back to the Major Series and coverage here on Grid Vision, and what's been an interesting one so far for the Pacific region in its second split. Justin Pritz alongside Ben Williams, Austin John Bishar producing. Wayne Taylor still leads by almost 5 seconds. Beyond in second, then Isaacs, Weatherington, and Dans. Shank, Klaus, Steele, Paulison, and Partridge, your top 10. Already near fully 20 cars falling a lap down in this race. So far, so strong when it comes to Taylor with the strategy differential. Keep in mind, part of the calculation was forwarded over. The liters, in terms of the mileage in the tank, about 111 liters fit into the tank. You drop about 2.35 liters per second on average. So in turn, drivers like Taylor with the strategy, using mathematics to their own gain today.
Yes, and we're definitely seeing some interesting strategy calls as we're seeing some drivers electing to short fill going into the second round of stops here. Particularly Taylor, who was able to use his advantage of the time gain to be able to pull out this lead over Bune, as Bune was leading when they came into the pit cycle just 12 laps ago. Oh, I'm sorry. Doing the quick math, 7 laps ago.
So basically a full tank in the 019, an underfueled tank for Taylor, or at the very least enough to be able to get him to where he wants to go on the next pit stop delta.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm wondering how Taylor is going to be playing this to his advantage, because he's going to run out of fuel for Well, he might be trying to do a 40-lap run this time.
Yeah.
Since the tires usually fall off before the fuel for these supercars, so maybe he's being a little more, a little bit harder on these tires to kind of make up for having the lesser fuel. We'll see how this all shakes out over these next couple laps.
Yeah, that's going to be the biggest equation. He's running 109.8, keep in mind, on the racetrack. Everyone else in the field in the 110 bracket. In part because, if we look towards the weather, the air temp hasn't changed much. But the in-sim time has moved just past noon. Meaning your Fahrenheit temperature has skyrocketed to about 85 degrees Fahrenheit, which means much lower lap times in theory because there's less grip on the racetrack.
Yeah, this racetrack is going to heat up a lot in this near noonday sun, so we might be able to start to see some of these tires even fall off quicker than they have been in the last beginning laps of this race.
Let's look at our battle. Timothy Klaus amongst those in the close groupings. He's trying to hold off Roger Schenk. Klaus gained a few spots in the cycle. Schenk is up 11 as the race has progressed so far for Mad Sim Racing.
Yeah, and I believe Schenk was also one of our drivers that elected to short fill during that last round of stops. So doesn't look like it's really benefited him on position, but we're going to go to a replay here. Riding on board with Ken Long as he's coming up to his, one of Colt's favorite corners, and unfortunately, walking the breaks up. Bit of a sketchy rejoin there, but looks like no contact, so everyone's able to make it out of that corner without incident. Definitely going to be hurting his tires, though, with that lock-up and half spin there.
By the way, Ken did take the faster pair. That's why the wings were back on. Their battle is 1-2 estimated in Sport Bronze. More off-track moments. A little bit of a close moment once again in the midst of this battle. Sebastian Jackson. That was Ron McPherson trying to let cars go in that. William Fletcher. That is a part of the position grouping. Sebastian Jackson moving up to 18th with that. Phil Otto next up in line for the 87 to make a pass on.
Yeah, definitely interesting to see how this race is shaking out throughout this mid-pack here. We've been seeing cars like, I believe that's McPherson there. Yes, it is. Still circulating around despite being several laps down. And it's being very interesting to see how it affects the story of the race going forward. As the car we're on board just locked up a little bit. We got a nice group of cars here. Led by the number 58. You can see, I believe that is our leader in the background behind these. Here's second place, Bien. Not too far behind, about 5 seconds back. Taylor is probably going to get past these cars as soon as possible, but given that he's a really nice draft train here, he might elect to stay behind them on these straights and able to save just a little bit of fuel as they're coming down here to turn 6.
Great opportunity indeed. And still with some time to be able to hold on. Having to wait for a little bit though. Stephen Paulson, Bryce Roberts, Ray Partridge, all for position here. This is 9th through 11th. And Paulson having a very solid day to say the very least. One of his better races this season, you can argue.
Yep. Seeing Taylor electing to still stay behind these cars coming down through turn 1 and turn 2 and 3. We might see him pull out coming out of turn 4 here, see if we can get a little bit of drag race. And there's a car without a front clip.
That was
interesting.
That was Brian Scrivener. I did notice he went off track. That was the 70 car.
Yes.
In turn 2, 3, and 4 is where the hood disappeared, for those curious. But he's still going. No meatball flag. He can still drive.
coming out onto turn 1 here by the looks of it. Looks like he just clattered the curb just a little bit too much, unsettled the car, and yep, that would be the end result of that.
So he has elected to take the faster pair. He's come down to the pits. Race leader Wayne Taylor lost another 2 seconds just now, though, after stabilizing the difference. It took a while for him to pass Ray Partridge. Ken Leon, meanwhile, just rejoined the track in front of the 019 to lose him the 2 seconds back. So what is going on here?
Yeah, it looks like the background of that shot, we had 3Y coming down to the turn 1 there. So definitely not exactly a situation that Bune wants to be in, to make sure that he stays on the back of Taylor.
Pardon me, originally it looked to be the possible rejoin. It was more so actually a factor of lap traffic on the block down the front. Regardless, though, Leon able to take advantage to become the kind of the pick between the leader and the second place car, one of the several picks. Here's the thing, though. It's pretty clear in terms of that discussion with Taylor and company. They have made it clear they want to fight the race. That's not going to make it easy the rest of the way because the pace is near identical for the leaders compared to the back end of the top 10.
Yeah, and while Bion's running a bit of more of a conservative strategy, Taylor, he's still going to want to be near Taylor whenever these next round of pit stops happen in roughly 30 laps time.
It's just past a quarter of the way for the fuel strategy.
Yes.
No place to go for the time being. Keep in mind, Wayne Taylor has not made any indents on 9th or 10th place. So if anything, Bion's the one making the indents just by riding behind Ken Leon, even though he wants to go here. He's actually gaining time by just staying.
Yeah. He's also going to be saving his tires because while he's going to be behind Leon in the corners, he's not going to be able to push as hard as he might normally. And also being in this draft, he's going to not be using as much gas as he would normally running by himself in clear air. But that's where the strategy call lies. Do you continue to sit here and to potentially lose time, depending on what the cars between him and Taylor are doing? But we're going to go to a quick replay further back in the field.
So what happened here? This is Patrick Stein. That's Sebastian Jackson. This was for position 15th, 16th. Well, that's a way to lose a spot.
Yeah, that is a way to lose a spot. Unfortunate for Stein here, losing that position. He's definitely going to want to be able to get his head back down and get that position back.
Also, this just happened moments ago. After the lockup in front, Dom Parks follows the lockup train and spins it.
Yep.
And Dom Parks in 22nd spot currently.
Yeah, looks like there weren't that many cars around Parks, so he was able to get his car back off the racing line, get it turned around, and headed back in the right direction. Bune's still sitting here behind this lap-down car. Definitely interested to see if he's going to maybe try and gain a little more time. You can see Taylor just not even half a straight ahead of Bune, so this might actually work out in Bune's favor.
Well,
that said, there's a huge gaggle of cars right here.
Was about to say this no longer became beneficial because Taylor has passed all those train cars in front, and now it's a 4-car train, 4 position that he needs to find a way around one by one. Good luck.
Yeah. If you're in a battle like this, you're not going to be as interested in losing time for yourself, letting the cars that are a lap ahead of you pass. So it's going to take a lot of patience and a lot of really smart decisions to be able for Bune to get through this effectively.
So Bune waiting for the chance to poke around. Right now, Stephen Paulson losing touch to Bryce Roberts. So now back to a 3-car train. Ray Partridge, a driver who's contended in the past in multiple different regions in this series, not able to get the run yet. Showing the nose, though, trying to pressurize the mistake, just can't get alongside yet, although he is getting closer and closer.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, he was a little bit out of position coming up into turn 2, and he actually had to let off going into turn 3 to make sure he didn't literally drive off the course. He's definitely staying to the left, though, to let Bjorn and Glenn by as well.
So right now, Beyond, at the very least, able to get by Partridge. And the blink of the headlights trying to say, I'd like to go too. Keep in mind, he's been stuck behind Leon for about 6-7 laps now.
Yep, Taylor has started to pull away just a little bit more throughout this last lap here, with Ben trying to make his way through these 4 cars, now 2-car traffic.
No place to go yet. And you got to be wondering what's going through the mind, because now Partridge is off the track. Rather, check that Paulison. There's the move.
Yep, Bjorn made the smart decision when moving his position on track to react to the car being off track. Bjorn just took that opportunity and just slingshotted right past him.
Oh, and showing a little bit of wanting to dictate the line movement now. And there's the big difference. You know, now picking up some car lanes, now has to try and close up nearly 5 seconds to get back up to Wayne Taylor. Again, these are some of the closest battles on the racetrack for those just tuning in, reaching nearly the halfway point in about 20 laps time or so. The Sandown 500, the Pacific region, split 2 for the Major Series. The quest for a championship this season. Just 3 rounds to go, including this one here tonight. The monster races left to go, coming out of the Roots event class tonight. You have the classic class of the Holy Fires 400. Then you have Formula M, the Formula Majors, basically, for the British GP to close out the season in the next few months or so. It's been a busy season to get to this point, to say the very least. They've had to run everything throughout this campaign, from endurance racing as a predator round to the Daytona 500 and many more as the season has progressed this year.
Yep.
Let's take a look at the trouble replays. Go ahead.
Yes, riding on board with Ford Mustang coming into... Yeah, this is Diggs, unfortunately, going wide into turn... Whoa.
Where is he going?
Through a fire truck, apparently. Diggs going wide, going down into turn 6, I believe, spinning his car around in that gravel and ending up pretty far off the circuit.
In the same corner, Ron McPherson having issues. Or same complex.
No, I believe McPherson's down at turn 11.
10.
Is it turn? Okay.
11. Yeah, you're right. 11.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Meanwhile,
back on board here with Josh Mertz here. Or Mertz, excuse me. Yep, that's another excursion into a wall. That's not a great place to be. Hopefully he didn't back up into that lap traffic there.
Here's the problem.
Going back on board with him here.
Ray Partridge, keep an eye on him, because he's amongst those who zip on by in this. He got stuck into the guardrail just now in that same complex. And he could not turn the car around, so he just had to tow. So, coming out of turn 4, it's been a trouble spot all day. Keep an eye on this, and keep in mind, if you hit the guardrail hard enough, sometimes you go through it. Guess who went through it?
Yeah, that is unfortunate for Partridge. He was making some moves throughout this race, and unfortunately he's down out of the top 20 now, having to be towed back to the pits. going back live here, we got Taylor still out in the lead, but Bune, after getting out from behind some of that live traffic, has closed down this gap by almost a full second now. You can definitely see how much of a hindrance Long was being to Bune's pace, but Bune was probably able to save his tires and some fuel while being behind him. But now that he's back out on the zone, he's definitely making the most of it.
Can he fully close it up is the major thing right now. Under 3 seconds the gap. He does still have Bryce Roberts again, as well as Ryan Steele to deal with the 8th and 9th place battle that's starting to form up right in front of him.
Mm-hmm. And about 30 seconds back from this group, we've got Weatherington, Isaacs, and Dance, which all are about the same distance from each other, but we could potentially see a battle for 3rd, 4th, and 5th about to ignite here.
Albeit just need to take a little bit of time to get towards them being so close.
Yes. Dance has been running Isaacs down over these last couple laps, particularly after he lost a lot of time spinning on the front straight. A bit of a commentator's curse that occurred earlier in tonight's race.
Don't say that again. It usually triggers the curse once again.
Yep. So we're just going to ignore Dance and Isaacs for right now and go ahead and check at the front of the race, seeing how Bien's making his way through traffic.
Yeah, good point. Next up amongst those, Ron McPherson. Here's the thing, McPherson just about got ran over by Taylor because McPherson is trying to get to the pit lane with an issue. He has moved out of the way, though, beyond able to zip on by.
Yeah, we got Bien sitting right behind Roberts right now, going down here into turn 1. Hopefully, well, we might be seeing another instance where Bien's just going to be happy to sit behind Roberts and steal for a couple of laps. He's obviously not losing that much time to Taylor, as the gap has kind of stayed around that 2 to 4 seconds mark throughout this lap, or throughout this fuel and tire. You know what I'm saying.
Yes, this entire stint.
Yes.
That being said, amongst this again, think of the big picture of things when it comes to the season complexion. We talked already about a bit of some of the various battles to consider, some of the various positioned conversations coming in terms of points, situations. The more this race turns, the more intriguing it's going to potentially get. Because we touched a bit upon the Sport Bronze with Klaus. He's been having a very good race. Reneker, not so much. Shank's been doing very solidly. He's kept him where he's needed to do so, but he is range of losing points. Mertz, he was about those next in line in that class. He's had a horrific race.
Yeah,
then you compared... Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Coming down to turn 1, we saw Roberts make his way past Steele, and Bien was able to follow him through. And now Steele and Lund are going to be fighting for 9th overall right now. See how much the Roberts is able to be used, that distance that Bien being there has provided to pull away from this battle.
Let's take a look here and break down this McClure, actually.
Yes, it looks like Kerr had a bit of an issue getting just a little bit too much on the curve coming out into turn, I believe that would have been turn 6. So, a little bit of a half spin, not that much of a problem. It's able to keep going. Now we're on board with the 944 of Brent Tunnelson, just kind of spinning it into the tire wall on the inside of turn 13. Luckily, he's pretty far off the track, so he's not going to be an issue for any other drivers, but there's a lot of cars coming through there, so he's probably going to have to wait for a while before he can pull out.
I will say one thing I've noticed as night has progressed. These cars seem to be, on the iRacing service at least, because in part of the damage model, be built like tanks. They've taken a lot of hits tonight.
They have. For what I remember, these are specialty built chassis tube frame car style cars. So they are able to take a pretty good beating and keep on going. Um, More often than not in the supercar series, it's normal to kind of see what we saw with Long earlier in the race, running around without some body panels.
And
Taylor here getting a little anxious going through lap traffic, getting the undercut of this Ford Mustang of, I can't quite see from
Parks.
here who that is. Who?
that's Tom Parks.
That's Tom Parks. All right.
Did get
Yeah,
around.
he was able
pretty
to get around quick. Bit of a lockup going to turn one, though, so definitely had a lot more speed than what he was expecting, being able to use that draft to get past Parks. Now he's behind McPherson. McPherson, excuse me, who's been having a variety of issues throughout tonight's broadcast, but he's still in it, still trucking.
.240 the difference. 2 seconds, 4/10 of a second. Let's look again, because guess who's caught to fourth? After several slides, Jonathan Dans. His pace is equalized just about to the leaders, so likely not going to catch up to that rate unless he gets a lot of help. However, he does have the pace to potentially get himself as high as fourth, if not third, in these next few laps or so. He's had to reel in 3 seconds to get up to Isaacs. Isaacs lost 3 seconds in turn to get to him.
Yeah, looks like there's going to be a bit of time before they catch up to the next couple of lap cars. So let's see how this battle between Isaacs and Dance happens. They're coming down here to turn 6. Dance has really managed to pull up behind Isaacs, coming down through turn 7 and 8. Isaacs pulling a little bit ahead of Dance, but Dance is able to get right back under him, coming down through turn 11 and 12, heading onto the front straight here. He's definitely in a good position to be able to potentially use this draft to be able to get past Isaacs before we get to turn 1. And there's the move. Dance is going to the inside of the corner, going past Isaacs, making good use of that. Ooh, seeing car spin off, almost spin off in the background.
That was Stein.
That was Stein, yes. So, Dance up into 4th place, front of Isaacs. Isaacs is definitely still there, though, so we'll see what happens as this battle progresses, going down to the front straight here, the back straight here, down towards turn 6.
So Dance indeed moving himself up to 4th. It's taken a while to get back up here, originally the pole sitter for this race. Let's take a look at some replays meanwhile. Not again!
Oh, no. And, yeah,
At this point, somebody give Damien a map at this corner.
I will give Damien the benefit of the doubt. It was a bit of a different bobble going into that corner, but unfortunately, he and turn 9 of this course are just not getting along.
I mean, we're on lap 72. At this point, you would at least have some semblance of the corner.
Yes, hopefully, but yeah, Colty might just be having some issues just overall with his car. He might be carrying some damage from an earlier incident that might have occurred after his fast repair that is causing him to have some instability under brakes.
Well, let's take a look at some more trouble spots, because Jonathan Diggs would take a look at what happened here. He's already hit a fire truck this run. What happened this time?
A little bit of a missed brake going into turn 12 there. Bit of an odd entrance onto the front straight, but it doesn't look like he was there wasn't too much of a interruption to his pace. You're seeing now Dance is just pulling a gap on Isaacs here throughout this last couple of laps. Pulling out pretty much a full second and a half. Isaacs has a
Trouble! Second spot! Beyond's been turned! Beyond has been turned by lap traffic trying to get around Dom Parks.
That is not something that you want to see in tonight's race. Beyond has been driving a great race, and oh, that is not good.
Mandatory damage. He had been held up for a couple corners trying to make his move before turn 9. And then around it goes.
Yeah, that intersingular breakdance there is definitely not going to be good to Beyond's car, and doesn't look like that was in any way intentional. That Ford Mustang just moved just at the ill-advised time, and Beyond was just, there wasn't enough racetrack for both cars to be there. I believe that was the 303.
Yep, that was Dom Parks. Frustration already popped up on the radio. You seen there was a little bit of air, but it was tight.
It was very tight there.
And again, I don't blame him for making the move. Keep in mind, he was within 1.6 seconds at the time. Before he reached Dom Parks in this prior corner here, he was within 1.2 seconds. And with the old damage model, the car doesn't crush in like it does with the new damage model.
Mm-hmm. And that might be being saving grace here, but out of the pits, fast repair. Now the full send is going to happen, I believe, for Beyond. He's going to be off sequence as compared to all the other drivers around him. So we'll see what he's going to be doing strategy-wise throughout the rest of this race. Still in 5th place, though, so
yeah,
he hasn't lost that much time, but still, running second with a significant lead going down to 5th is not going to feel good. And I also believe that means that he is close to being lapped as well.
Which makes it even worse. Now a minute and 2 seconds back of Wayne Taylor now. So Taylor now nearly 30 seconds is the advantage. He's had a couple close calls himself as the leader. But right now things are looking solid for his interval, but we're not at halfway yet. Still in position to potentially win his first race in the major series here tonight. This is his home track, mind you. He is for the Australia-New Zealand region. So is this the night the Middle Finger Racing driver, Wayne Taylor, gets the job done? He's now up by 32 seconds because Witherington and Dance are the next nearest cars. They are a half a track plus back.
Yeah, we're coming up to about halfway in tonight's race in a couple laps, so still a lot of race to happen. Still plenty that can and will go wrong. This is racing after all.
Yeah, but remember, the main thing that got Wayne Taylor to the spot that, if you just tune in, he had the best start of it anybody in that standing start. He gained spots and gained several tenths. This is a car that he has had experience with on the sim. As a matter of fact, 2016, he won a championship in the Development League, or rather was one of its top drivers in 2016. So it is a car for the Gold Coast region driver that he has some experience in and has raced a fair bit over the years. Just not as of late in official action, obviously.
Yeah, as we see Taylor come down to turn 1, though, knowing that he's got 30 seconds over Worthington in second place, though, you got to be thinking that he's going to just maybe not push quite as hard now. Turn this into more of a not as much as an outright sprint race, but more as an endurance race. Not as high intensity driving he might have been doing while trying to get through this pack. But we have a replay first.
This time, it's involving Kinetic versus Donk Bear in the battle. The 04 John Dolson. And that's a little love tap to the back end of a competitor.
Yes, not ideal, especially whenever you didn't mean to do that, but you end up damaging your car as a result of that, as we're seeing with this 04 Mustang, which was missing its hood during their replay. And yep, there it goes there. Yep. Whenever you're in a draft like that, you gotta be aware that you might be entering corners at a little bit of a faster speed. You need to change your braking point along with that.
Oh.
And we have another car backwards in the barrier. Kirsten again. This guy cannot catch a break this evening.
So the 143 for U-Docs continuing to have a night. He is the last car running, 9 laps down. He has still not destroyed the car, reached the 60 incident point limit, despite his best efforts. Or his worst efforts, so depending on how you look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just outbraked himself just a little bit going to turn 4, put it up on the curb, unsettled the car, and around she went.
Keeping on talking about things right now as things stand out. Dance continues to zip around that car in the backdrop. Once again, was more troubles for Trosselin. Here's a look at Isaacs. Isaacs again has lost touch to Dance now in 3rd. But he's doing what he needs to do when it comes to scoring points in the situation handed to him, basically. And when you're in a battle for the standings in Sports Silver, and you know, things could get interesting with the differences between top split and second split tonight. Just run your race.
Mm-hmm. Run the race that's in front of you. That's all you can really potentially have control over. I think we're going to be seeing another race that we were watching with Taylor and Bjorn. Now it's going to be Dance and Isaacs, as we're seeing how the gap changes and like stretches and shortens depending on lap traffic here.
And I will say, I had to search if that was a real sponsor on the car tonight. I believe this is a mixture of a paint from Real World Racing and some of their sponsors, because that is a production company that does exist, that does promotional stuff for action sports. They just don't usually use the logo, except for the little emoticon. It takes a little bit of a rabbit hole to see who the sponsor actually is and if it's related. For reference, Jerry Isaacs, he keeps things close to the chest when it comes to the profile, obviously.
Yep. Oh, I believe I saw a car off there in the background. Didn't quite catch who that was. Let's see. Oh, luckily our awesome producer caught it. This is Fletcher. Fletcher coming down through turn 3 and turn 2 here. Yep, locking the brakes, coming up in the turn 4, and spinning the car almost fully around. He's able, though, to back off of the racing line and get his car back moving in the correct direction.
Keep going, but to really answer my own question about Jerry Isaacs, he also just so happens to be someone who raced in go-karts back for 2 years. Have you ever heard of the TKC, which is basically kart chaser in their respective races? Following the Take Every Championship, finished 4th back then as well. Ran in the 2013 edition. Then since then has basically become a sim racer in various different series. As you will with the progression of the time. I'm joking, obviously.
Yep, I believe we just witnessed
no, more Damian Colty trouble you just seen on screen.
Yes. I thought that might have been a pass position, but it looks like I got my my yellow Holdens mixed up, unfortunately.
It happens. There's lots of yellow cars. That was Ray Partridge you made contact with, by the way, in front of some of those cars you've seen. Both are still running. Fletcher, by the way, has still stayed in the pit lane for repairs.
Yep.
But to the task on hand, with how things have fared out here, we're at halfway in the race. And the pit window is within 10 laps. So now it gets interesting with Taylor, because remember, he underfueled a bit on the fuel in the leaders. Likely going to be coming in the next 3 laps. Witherington within about 4 or 5. Dance and Isaacs, as a matter of fact, basically with how things have cycled, the top 4, all drivers who haven't been in trouble, have all underfueled the car. The first of those who full fueled the car was Beyond, and, well, not on his own fault, mind you, finished upside down in that fuel run and is now off cycle.
Yeah. What's going to be interesting to see is Beyond is now the first car that is not a lap down. So be interesting to see how his pace is going to differ as compared to Taylor. Beyond's not going to want to go a lap down. So we're going to probably see Beyond pressing his off-fuel strategy here to the extreme to make sure that he doesn't lose out too horribly during this pit cycle.
Keep in mind some of the differences you see on some of the cycles. Wade Hutchinson had to serve the penalty earlier. It's been a solid recovery from him, back up to the top 10. So he's amongst those who have also been able to make some moves as the night has progressed tonight.
Yeah, saw 70 car here just go a little crazy. So just not quite getting it slowed down for turn 1 and having to make some evasive maneuvers out on the outside curb.
We have our first DNF of the race just past halfway. William Fletcher has parked it. He made it 77 laps, so not to the 50% mark in terms of the race distance. But he did have some laps down, so we'll see how things get scored for the points. Isaacs is also now in the pit lane, so the window is open for the leaders. Let's take a look at more replays, because what happened to Josh Mertz today? Run through the final sector, and then do this. That's a spin.
That is a spin. Not a great place to be backwards at this circuit. Going to be challenging to get that turned back around.
And the funny thing is, Mertz is a really solid oval driver. It's not been a good road course race for him tonight.
Yep.
He's really good at rallycross, too.
Yep. Well, maybe he'll be able to use those rallycross skills to be able to get that car whipped around 180 degrees and heading back down the front straight.
So Taylor still keeping on going, trying to get to lap 40. Isaacs, for reference, went 42 seconds in the box. Expecting to be similar here for these pit stop deltas coming up here. Colty lets on by the leader. 34 seconds the difference as he makes his way to the front straightaway. This is likely the money lap. We'll see if he keeps it likely. He's able to at least keep going. So despite the less delta in the fuel, he's still keeping on going. And
yep.
It's to the point, though, 4 cars, just 4, are on the lead lap.
Yeah, we're definitely probably seeing the benefits of Taylor feeling a little less pressure, maybe not pushing as hard towards the end of this pit stop cycle. Definitely going to be interesting to see if he's going to be able to extend this lead of Worthington through this pit cycle. We'll see if he takes full fuel this time. Maybe he'll only take the smaller amount of fuel that he did the last time. Definitely going to be interesting to see what happens.
It's been very dictated in terms of his tempo right now.
In this position, seeing Taylor do another lap, I think I would take fuel and not have to worry about stretching it throughout the rest of the race.
Yeah, it's a one-stop regardless of how you slice it. It's just the further you push the run, the less fuel in theory you might even have to take for the final stint. And keep in mind, Beyond, who basically had an incident about 3/4 of a stint for reference, went 32 seconds at the box, so that may be a potential factor later on, where if anybody throws a Hail Mary strategy, that could get interesting. If anything happens to Taylor, that's the big difference.
Yeah. But again, this is racing. Anything can happen. Everything will happen.
Are you trying to say everything will happen, including a tornado, a hurricane, and a tsunami at the same time?
Maybe not in iRacing yet.
Keyword is yet.
Yes.
Give it a few months.
Give it a few months.
Speaking of giving it a few moments, Taylor keeps going now to 43 laps, likely by the end of the lap. Very impressive. And had a feeling this may come into play after we've seen drivers go to 47, 48. Taking a look, meanwhile, at second place, Witherington. He's amongst those with some experience in sim racing over the years. How far back? 1995. That was back in the time where he was originally in some of the predecessors to iRacing, NASCAR Racing, and that series through Papyrus on the, what he described as the Hawaii server. This is a driver based out of Texas, mind you, or Tennessee, mind you. But in turn, that experience earned him the chance to be a beta tester for some of those games back in the 1990s. So a lot of experience, let's put it that way, from him, and there he goes off the track.
Yep. Clearly, we were coming to the end of a pit cycle here. You're seeing Worthington's tires starting to struggle a little bit. Definitely going to be interesting to see how these lap down cars are going to be able to make their way past Worthington if he's not quite up to pace yet. He's up to pace now, but there's a bit of a sketchy slide from, I believe that's Steele in the 12. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Steele able to kind of slide past him while Worthington was still going. We got trouble in the back. Looks like Isaacs.
Oh, what happened to Isaacs? Jerry Isaacs has gone off the track, and this is after contact from third place Jonathan Dance. Wow.
Oh, yeah. That is very unfortunate move. Looks like they were both trying to get down into, was that turn 9?
I can't tell if that was a door. Well, it definitely looked like some sort of movement of a check.
Yeah.
And that, in turn, did not damage Isaac's car, but did definitely lose him some time.
Yeah. I'm not sure. It might have just been too many cars and one bit of racetrack, but I'm not sure why Dance would kind of jink to the right there going into that corner. Maybe he felt like he was going to hit the curb a little bit too hard and decided to make a last-minute correction, but you saw the end result of it, and it's definitely unfortunate for Isaacs.
Spit window still in live action. Dance, keep in mind, is still in that second spot on the racetrack. Here's the difference right now. That is Taylor. That is a teammate, rather, that's in the backdrop right now to where Taylor should be on track. In Leon from Mad. But I was about to say, when it comes to Dance, someone who does have road course experience, actually some of the higher up road course experience, racing against some of the various teams actually who've competed in this championship over the years, like Grizzly, who's partnered with Torque Freak Racing, for example. He's
Here comes Taylor at the pits.
One of their top drivers. He comes on in, Wayne Taylor does, meanwhile. Pit stop number 2 for the race leader in the 564. As there goes Dance, meanwhile, see how he does on this pit stint. I was about to say, he also has a background as an endurance racer in Ivor's respective series, where he's been a contender of the Pro-Am circuit, top 5 a couple years running as one car runs into the wall. That was Jonathan Diggs.
Yep. Again, seeing that if you're not playing nice with the curbs, they will bite.
Mantor repairs now for the 99. He has hit the wall hard enough to do so. Dance is also coming in 45 laps on the mark. And that means Beyond, who still is off cycle now after the flip, Gonna be an interesting spot where he cycles.
Mhm.
He
Looks like he's
cycles to
gonna
the
cycle
lead.
Yep, right in front of Taylor. You can see him coming out of the pits in the background there.
I don't think he can get to a spot where he can get even on the cycles, though. Or rather, in a spot where they get close enough to where they race it out.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of mathematics. Right now, 16 laps the stint for Beyond. Taylor just completed the stint with 71 laps to go this time by. You do the math? I don't know. We'll do the math when we come back. You're watching Grid Vision for coverage of the Major Series. Here.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work, so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Welcome back to Grid Vision, where the math has been calculated, and it could get interesting from here. For those watching along for the major series in the second split for the Pacific region, things took a turn when Jonathan Bion was turned across into the wall and flipped upside down, made it back to the pit lane. He is off the cycle by about 16 laps. However, here's the thing. He's the current race leader. The gap is about 1.5 to 2 seconds, give or take, depending on the lap. Now, if he goes out this full run without any troubles, or rather any more troubles of incidents, he can make it to the end and make his final stop at 42 laps to go. However, that would be on lap 29 of Wayne Taylor's current stint. So things could get interesting. He can make it on a 3-stop, barely, by about 3 laps. But it's the matter of where he and Taylor are for that final stint that could become the deciding factor, Ben.
That's right, yeah. And we're going to see how traffic is going to be able to play out into Bion and Taylor's battle for the lead here. Because you can see Taylor in the background as Bion's traveling down the back straight here, heading down to turn 6. So this is going to be a huge strategy call for Bion. He's got to make sure that he not only gets to that magic number lap, but he's also going to have to make sure that he's not slowing himself down too much that Taylor's able to get back past him. So definitely going to be interesting to see what happens throughout the rest of this race.
But in turn, that has to put a lot of pressure on Taylor, because you can't just say, okay, we'll take some extra fuel. If he goes to 45 seconds, he's if on top of, if not behind Bion again, like he is currently.
Yeah. Well, what we were talking about before our break was that Taylor had a 30-plus second lead over second place of Worthington, who has dropped back pretty significantly. Don't remember if we actually saw what happened on air, but we were talking about how Taylor might be able to relax a little bit, but now that is off the table. You can see Bion is right here ahead of him, so Taylor's going to be looking in the back of that car and trying to do the calculations himself whether or not Bion's going to be able to make it in this current running of affairs at the moment.
Let's put this in the mindset, too, of if there was a 14-second fuel difference for Taylor on the final stop. Right now, similar to what Bion had to do for his incident. That put him about 12 seconds up the road from the 0-19. So, keep in mind, the closer he gets to Bion, the better he helps his case potentially for the final run. The farther back he gets, even with the tire difference right now. Mind you, he's got fresher tires in theory. The more that weighs on him, potentially you'd have to think for that final stint, because Bion would have the chance to have a massive undercut on him depending on when he elects to come in.
Yeah, most definitely. Bion's going to have to run his tires basically to the end at this point, but Taylor's got a little bit more wiggle room in his strategy. Taylor doesn't look like he's slowed down his pace at all throughout these last couple of laps. Definitely seeing some interesting lines from, I believe that is the 9?
That's the 8, Ray Partridge.
Okay. Yeah, definitely seeing some interesting lines from Partridge there, but Taylor's definitely going to have to make some interesting strategy calls throughout this race, while Bion has pretty much one strategy that he'll have to follow to be able to get to the end on 3 stops.
So a lot of calculations to consider here in the midst of all this. Again, 2.5 seconds seems to be the average delta at this point of the run. Still some traffic in between them as well. That's Patrick Stein at 19th place. And here's the thing, kind of becoming the meat in the sandwich here in all this is Taylor, because that battle is starting to pop up 19th and 20th. That's in part why you'd think Partridge is pushing so hard, albeit trying to avoid slowdown penalties like he had the last time he cut the section coming up in Sector 2. Oh, this time he cuts the inside curb.
Doesn't look like it was enough to potentially trigger a slowdown, though. So he might have been able to get away with that one.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But
we're also seeing Worthington is now about a second ahead, or a second behind. I'm sorry, a full minute. I'll get there eventually, ladies and gentlemen. A full minute behind Beyond on track, so he could potentially go a lap down within the next couple of laps here, depending on what his pace is like compared to Beyond's.
all that with being the interesting chess match that's broken out here around the racetrack. Again, 4 cars in the lead lap. Now things have cycled out. Timothy Klaus just losing a spot now for the first major change in a while to Sebastian Jackson. That's a model inside the top 10 you seen on the board switch around. Outside of that, Phil Otto and Adam Johnson close. Don Dolson and Bryce Gribner also close on track. And this is why they are close a little bit in terms of some of their positioning. That's Otto. Adam Johnson nearly running over, trying to get Ronald McPherson.
Yeah, McPherson has been through the elephant this race. He definitely has a pretty banged up car right now, so we definitely know he's been in the pits at least once for damage repairs, so we'll see how long he continues on with that car. I believe we also, I don't think we've mentioned it yet, we had another car elect to retire from the race during the commercial break.
That was Damian Colty, who indeed pulled out of the race, 14 laps down. He's your second DNF of the day today. All
Yes,
this battle, we were talking.
It's unfortunate for Colty. Good, sorry, continue.
Yeah, elected to come down after reaching about 60% of the race complete. But I was about to say, the battle we've been keeping an eye on with Otto and Johnson is around where your leader is. The one thing that's most intriguing me in all this is a lot of drivers are still holding on to the faster pairs, even though they haven't had anything that sparked more incidents. I understand the need or the feeling to keep on the faster pair, but this is a track where you need a clean car eventually for the speed. The drivers with damage have seen some slowdowns, like Otto is running the 110 4s. The leader's running 109 6s.
As any oval racer would tell you, that whenever you have a faster pair, that where there's a potential of a big incident happening, that it's better to hold on to it before that incident so you can keep going rather than to worry about small dinks and dents as you go out through the race.
But we're talking about drivers without hoods who have yet to use faster pairs.
Well, in that case, Justin, is a bold strategy, and we'll see how it plays out.
I mean, can get the point in that mark. I'm more so an oval driver myself in the service. I will say that that is a mindset that comes into play. Especially, say, if you use it in the first or second caution, you're flipping upside down. The new damage mod, you can fix the car to be almost brand new, depending on how many cautions you get. But it's a bit more trickier on the road side, you could argue.
Mm-hmm. Yes, most definitely. Just completely different natures of the beast between oval and road racing, which I know is not exactly the news flash of the day, but definitely different mindsets you need to keep whenever you're going through this. But again, it's a long race. There are 40-ish laps of potential that things could go wrong for you. So keeping a hold of that fast repair might be your saving grace at the end of this race.
Looking back over to Jonathan Dance, meanwhile, depending on how things play out, at least on the podium after having to recover to get back up here, did have contending pace to close up to Beyond and Taylor at one point, but has backed that pace down as the track has gotten hotter. Track temp has actually started to cool down a little bit now that's past 1 o'clock, interestingly enough, to 83 degrees Fahrenheit. But it seemed as though the car for Dance was a little bit quicker in the cooler temps. Almost wonder if it comes down part, you think, to the setups. What would you say?
It could be a number of things, but first, looks like we got another replay here.
And it's Mertz again.
Yep, not an ideal place to go off there. We've seen a number of drivers having difficulty with that corner today, but none that have been able to catch air like that car.
But to continue
Okay,
the thought
Rallycross-
again, you're saying?
Yes. What was I saying? Oh, it could just be down to how the car is set up. It could be down to how much you've worn your tires over the course of the stint. It could be down to maybe how many practice laps you did in certain conditions where you're more comfortable in the warmer conditions and you're the cooler conditions. It could be a number of different factors that could go into play of whether or not Dance is faster in the cooler temperatures than the hotter temperatures. But fundamentally, you usually are faster in the cooler temperatures than the hotter temperatures, but you get what I'm saying.
Indeed. More
Or
traffic.
did I lose you?
No, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
But in turn, what I mean as well kind of is, a lot of teams sometimes build to a specific temp, you can argue. Especially
Yeah.
some of the top teams.
Yeah, especially like if you can plan to know that, okay, I'm going to be running at this temperature throughout this portion of the race, then you can kind of plan accordingly. Definitely going to be interesting to see what happens next here, though. We can see Isaacs is just ahead of Dance on the track right now, so we'll see if Isaacs is holding any ill intentions following their earlier incident. Hopefully nothing. What's the word I want to use here?
Nothing that will end up happening, indeed. Keep in mind, Isaacs did have to come to the pit lane and take himself off cycle. Hence why he's in 11th spot. And
Yes, so
now we'll see how this plays out a little bit. Under 60 laps to go. And now Isaacs is the lap traffic. Doesn't seem to be as much of a intention to yield here compared to some other cars. Oh, and Dance is sending it. Isaacs lets him have it.
yep. Although we had a Mustang go off in the background there, going into turn one. Anyway,
Everybody goes off in turn one.
yes. Yep. Very late in the race. Drivers are getting tired at this point. Riding on board with Bjorn right now. Bjorn has pulled out almost a 5-second lead over Taylor this last couple of laps. I'm trying to remember what lap he pitted on. We could be coming to the end of his pit cycle here in a few laps.
Again, for him to make the window, he needs to go another 12 laps at least, likely. 55 to go. Green light on gas is estimated to be around 45 to go, so around what you see on lap 116. So from there, we'll see when Beyond elects to come down.
Yep.
And
As we can see from our fun graphic here, he's on lap 32 of his pit cycle, so getting to that lap is very well within the 45 window that we were broadcasting, or not broadcasting, that we were estimating for these cars.
And it's all going to come down to the fuel number again. That likely is going to be the major playing factor. Can tell you at least a couple drivers are in the range of a 4-stopper. Ray Partridge just came down after 41 laps. He's not in the window. Also hearing some troubles involving Wayne Taylor over the radio with some of the traffic because he just had to get around Mark Rudiker and make contact with the 462. So no damage on Taylor. However, it lost him 2 more seconds.
Yeah, definitely not ideal for Taylor. As we've been talking about how he has to make sure that he's close enough to Bune to be able to make advantage of his slightly different strategy that Bune's on right now. Bune definitely might have the upper hand right now. We'll see what happens after these pit stops.
9 laps away from the green light on gas. Taylor now with some clean space to work with. Saying not so much for Beyond.
Yes, Bune is very much in the traffic at this point.
And remember, that's been the Achilles heel for majority of the leaders tonight. Getting cleanly around traffic on a track where it's not been easy to pass and where you need to be aggressive to make the pass. And in many cases, with drivers who don't like to be aggressively passed.
Yeah, whenever you are a lap down car in this situation, but you're still very much in your own race, having to solo up for someone to go past you is not an ideal situation for you. But eventually, you're going to have to weigh whether it's worth holding up the lead car, in this case, for the 35 Mustang here, whether it's worth holding up the lead car so that you can continue on your race, or potentially risk having a risky move done on you and ending up with both you and the car behind you in a wall.
Still looking to cycle about. A little bit on the traffic. Beyond currently being held up by Greg McElhaney. Some of the drivers in these respective groups around 14th with the separation have been cordial. Not so easy here. And this has been the trouble spot again. Sometimes the traffic is half a lap we're talking about here.
Yeah, you can see Bune is right on the back. This Mustang. He might have had a bit of a peak there, going on board with Bune now, behind this Ford Mustang. Looks like he's going to be trying to set up a pass right here. Takes it easily. Continues on his way. Using the trap to get past this lap down car.
Next up in the car traffic, lap down traffic. 4th place is at risk of falling a lap down. You see that pink and blue car?
Yep.
That is Witherington. So like we're going to finish off with the rate things are going with 3 cars on the lead lap. Not sure if we entered today thinking that was going to be the case.
Yeah. Going into tonight's race, I was expecting probably the top 10 to be on the lead lap, but it looks like at this point it's just these 3, well, these 4, potentially going to be these 3 cars on the lead lap, and then everyone down to 14th is a lap down, and then 14th down is multiple laps down. I was just seeing on the ticker.
For those curious, and because I wanted to refer, if you could take a guess how many drivers are on the lead lap right now in top split? Without looking.
Without looking, I'm going to estimate 8.
You're wrong. It's 4.
It's 4? Okay.
In the
Isn't it fascinating how it is kind of worked out similarly between these two splits?
The last of those drivers, surprisingly a little bit at least to me, is Christian Challenger, a multiple-time Major Series champion, former eNASCAR driver, and current iRacing employee that does a lot of the road course physics for the cars. He's doing solidly, though.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow.
Yeah, we just saw Bune work his way past Steele, and now Worthington is the only car ahead of him at the moment. Plenty of room between Worthington and the next lap down car, so Bune's going to get a nice opportunity to have some clean air. However, still remember, we're looking at his potential pitting within the next 8 laps, if I remember correctly. Definitely have a car off there, but it looks like he's electing to let everyone back pass before he gets back on the racing line.
That was Stephen Paulison in the 58, who was running in 12th. Reason he was off track was he went full throttle into the tire barrier in turn 1.
That is not ideal.
Leader is now right behind the 43, trying to keep the lead lap with 49 to go. 4 laps away from the green light to make it on fuel here at Sandown. It's been a busy night so far, more than 2 hours of racing already. By the time things complete, it's looking to be just around 3.5 hours tonight. But that's how much the time adds up over time when you're 1 second quicker as the leaders compared to the rest of the field.
Yeah, the leaders have really done a great job over the course of this race to keep their pace up as they're going in and through traffic, going and wearing their tires down. I believe you said that Bune was within a couple tenths overall of his fastest laps throughout this race. Or was that a different driver?
Either way, it's just been that type of a night. There goes the 4th place car, a lap down in turn. The Worthington falls down. Dance, Taylor, and Beyond are the only drivers left on the lead lap with 48 laps to go this time by. Lap 40 this time for Beyond, by the way, on the stint. And I guess, again, in Beyond's case, you better have made sure you took the full fuel that you could have taken on the pit stop the last time.
Yeah. Bune has definitely been playing his what was an unfortunate incident. He's definitely been able to use it to his advantage, get back to the lead, 8 seconds in front of the nearest car, and then 40 seconds to the nearest car after that. So either way, Bune's pretty much guaranteed a podium at this point.
So staying on the line. Two laps away from the window. Let's take a look at some replays. More troubles popping up around the racetrack. It started off so promising for Bryce Roberts, but he has fallen a bit down the pylon as of late because of issues like this.
Yeah, that was really unfortunate for Roberts. It didn't look like that was actually his fault, but we had one of the Blue Ford Mustangs spin in front of him, and he just had to react to what was going on.
That was Jonathan Diggs.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, what's going on with Mark Redeker? He's already just had to come out of the pit lane. Why was he in it? Just said, you know what, it's pit stop time. A lap after cutting that corner. Also, Brett Trosen, Dog Bear Car, has had a adventure at times tonight, but has been very quiet outside of incidents like these.
Yeah, Trosen going really high on the curb there, getting up into a really odd angle, which was not advantageous to his pace. On board with Phil Otto now in the 013, coming down the turn 4, and again just gets up on the curve and actually spins the whole way across the track and into that inside wall. Hopefully he's able to get his car spun back. Yep, very nicely done. Luckily there's no other cars around him, so he's able to get his car back underway. Definitely going to have to go into the pits to get that prepared, probably.
The replay festival continues. Adam Johnson. What is his entry? And a slide to the grass as gets himself side by side in turn with Paulison. Next up on the hits list, Jonathan Diggs. And this may be a trouble spot because
smart of Diggs to go ahead and tow out of that situation.
He did hear, though, something in that same sector. This is after the tow. 2 lap cars, Leon spins. Taylor holds on, and then it gets worse.
Yeah, that is not ideal. Really not ideal as Taylor hits the wall again, trying to get his car back underway after that incident. He is now 15.5 seconds behind Bune. Bune, who's due into the pits probably within the next 4 laps. It's got to be less than that now.
Wayne Taylor with the contact in turn. Ronald McPherson, meanwhile, has picked up some spots since some of the others have DNF'd. He is still in the race. Let's go back live. We're inside the green light on fuel to make it. And right now, Beyond being very cautious because as a result of that Taylor incident, this is now going to be a dead even race possibly on the fuel strat.
Yeah, as we were talking about, Taylor had to make sure he stayed as close to Beyond as he could throughout the closing stages of this race. But unfortunately, that incident means that Beyond's be able to pull out a pretty significant lead. And here he comes now to the pits.
So Beyond makes it in. He goes 44 laps. He'll need to make it 44 to complete this race. Going to be pretty tight on the margin. Expecting Wayne Taylor to keep on going here. There he goes to retake the race lead. He can still go another 12, upwards of maybe 17 laps. So it's going to take at least another 20 minutes or so to be able to see how things cycle before we know how this picture frame is going to look on the wall.
Yeah. What I'm interested in seeing now is how the margin between Dance and Beyond's going to look like. There goes Dance right now, past Beyond, still in the pits.
That was to be expected. That also puts Weatherington back on the lead lap temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
You also can say Ken Leon temporarily on the lead lap, but he is just about within range of being lapped either way. Now here's the main delta to look at. You see that pop up in just a second for Beyond. He's just left the pit lane now. The difference with a 45-second fuel stop and tire stop, 50.8 seconds, make it 51 seconds. Keep that in mind. As this run comes to an end, he needs to go out to the end. And even with the tire difference, Taylor lost ground compared to Beyond.
Yeah. It looks like Beyond has also come out in completely open air, so he's not going to be dealing with any lap down traffic as he's bringing his tires up to temp. Looks like the closest lap down cars are a good half a straight in front of him. So that's definitely going to be playing into Beyond's hand here. If Taylor comes out in traffic, this is definitely going to change how this race is going to end.
Keep in mind, Beyond a former driver in the international split before things shrank back down to 2 splits for this season. Several times ran in the international regions for the major series from 2018 to 23, and that's gonna go off the track.
Yep.
That's about another 2 seconds lost, and he's going the wrong way on the fresh tires and the cold tires.
Yep, a cold tires, heavy car. And you see the result. You still have, even though you might have done your pit stops and you can make it to the end, you still have to remain diligent about your tires.
In turn, though, was just about to say, he's never won in the major series in 60-plus starts entering tonight. Can that change for Jonathan Beyond with how things play out tonight here in the second split?
Beyond's definitely in a good position to be able to take that first win, but it's all gonna come down to how he's able to close that gap up to Taylor, how Taylor's going to be managing his tires, how Taylor's going to come out in traffic, how Taylor's going to be going through traffic. There are so many things that have to go right for Beyond to come first, but if they all go right, he'll get his first win.
More troubles, by the way, in the backdrop. Richard McClure has crashed again in the 84 from 15th. Like we'll see him fall down the pylon in the next moment or so. Others like Paulson coming in for their final scheduled stops. Jonathan Diggs now is officially out of the race. Here's what we're just referring to. That's cost him at least a couple spots again. And looks okay, and then the rejoin.
Gotta be careful with those curbs. They will bite you.
They'll listen eventually, after the race.
Yeah, unfortunately for McClure, he was just so out of sorts going through that chicane of turn 2 and 3 that he was just in a wrong position to take turn 4. And then just the way the car reacted jumping up onto that curb, it was just a recipe for, well, a tire wall.
A recipe on how to cook tires.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, Taylor, for reference, running the 109.6s. The average has seen him move back up to that rate. Although, he has picked up the pace. He was, on average, a little bit slower before that mark. Trouble for the 43. Weatherington has had his first major spin in Sector 1. He just had that as the leader passed on by him. Here's a look, and here is how he lost the lap this time.
Yep,
There's another one.
Yep, just getting up on that curb in turn 2, just unsettled his car just enough for him to spin his car around in a rather unfortunate place. Luckily, there wasn't that many cars around him, so he was able to get going back straight.
Still about 10 laps away from the window. Here's a look at Jonathan Dans. Mind you, he's gaining time again on Taylor. The problem is, too little too late. He needs a lot of time picked up. Mind you, things are close on time itself. We're about 1 hour and 34 minutes left on the clock.
Yeah, Dance is kind of in an unfortunate no man's zone at this point in the race. He's about 30 seconds, well, rounding up, 30 seconds from the lead, about 20 seconds to the car behind him. He's not really ingrained in battles right now, but he could still factor in if things go wrong for either Taylor or Bune.
It's absolutely something to watch for at this point. And we've seen crazier things happen in the major series, right? Here's one thing
yes.
I was about to say. Beyond and the 019 has not gained much at all. If you notice that interval, it stayed around the same since that initial mistake on the cold tires as well. It almost is feeling like it takes another 5 to 10 laps just for the tires to heat up at the rate things are going.
Yeah. Well, it is warm on the track right now. It is not exactly toasty either. So getting your tires up to temperature on a 86-degree track from the last I saw does take a little bit more time than you would expect. And particularly with this lap being so short, with drivers doing 109, saw a little bit of a lockout for BM going into turn turn 6 there. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that was turn 9. Definitely takes a little bit of a more of a lap count to be able to get your tires up to temp. Bune's actually lost 2 seconds after that little bit of a lockup.
Time keeps on going the way of Wayne Taylor, and that may be the one saving grace after losing so much time prior to the pit stops.
Yeah. Bune's got to be careful though, because he's still not going to have the tire advantage towards the end of this race, because Taylor's going to be able to have 15 fewer laps on his tires. 15 or 16
Trouble in front of Taylor. One car is just spun in. Greg McElraney right across Taylor. That's where the interval has just gone down. Let's take a look at the replay in turns 2, 3, and 4. It was about to get busy with traffic, and then this happened. Hello.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it slowed Taylor down that much, but definitely caused him to not attack that corner as hard as he might have normally. Doesn't look like Bune's caught up anytime. In fact, it looks like Bune's lost a little bit more time now.
Here's the look on board. And had the preferred line, so he just, after the look, zipped on by.
Yeah. Anyway, as I was saying, Bunes needs to look after his tires. If he's going to be trying to push to be able to make up that time that he's lost, he's not going to have the tires at the end of this race when it's really going to matter. Even if he does manage to get past Taylor on the pit cycle, Taylor's still going to be able to potentially run him back down, having fresher rubber.
Jonathan dances in. He's elected to go for a big undercut to close the race. And it's going to be interesting how Taylor tries to respond. There was some communication after the traffic over the radio. See if it's a move in coming up or just a simple thank you. After all, 3 more lap cars ahead.
Yeah, something for Taylor to think about right now is that he has so many cars ahead of him that it might be worth jumping into pits now. He's not going to have to worry about making the fuel stop to the end. Just jumping into pits now, getting into potentially some clear air, so he's not fighting these cars to keep his pace up.
Derek quick pass made that time on McSpiron, by the way. It's looking like he's going to try and extend. Further you go, the less gas in theory you'd have to take to end off this race. Again, that practice coming into play in full son to close out the run. Beyond still 54.3 seconds back. He has not made any inroads outside of a couple tenths this entire run. If anything, since the start of this run, Beyond has lost 3 seconds. And it's still, you have to think eventually it swings back.
It will. Trying to recall, there was a 15-second gap between these two cars when the pit cycle happened. But first, we're going to go to a replay. Riding on board with the 3rd place car now of Leon. Has a bit of trouble with turn 9. Goes out gravel trap. That's going to allow Taylor to go past him, as well as a couple of the other cars around him. I don't believe he lost a position, though, in that exchange.
Didn't really lose much time indeed. No contact from that. More routes from beyond to be able to get himself some clean air and clean track. I wasn't sure if there was going to be a pounce back from Don Dolson all of a sudden. Dolson, mind you, 3 laps down in 23rd. Couple others are coming in. Shank is in. Otto is in this time by. Pit window is open for a majority of the drivers. Others starting to communicate to try and sort out how they're going to play things out here. The last thing you want is for someone to accidentally run you over on your money stop.
That's very unfortunate. It'll be interesting to see how much further Taylor is going to stretch this. He definitely has to be thinking about how this is going to play in the long run. Bion's actually able to claw back 2 seconds over the last couple of laps back to Bion, back to Taylor, with Taylor making his way past all of those lap down cars.
Coming up to lap 40 this time for Taylor. Wayne Hutchinson in the pit lane. And Hutchinson, depending on how things cycle, has a chance to recover to 6th by the time things end off here, Ben.
Yeah, great drive by Hutchinson to keep going despite some of the earlier race antics that he was caught up in.
Remember, he had to go down to the pit lane because of a corner cut penalty.
Mm-hmm.
In turn, it's been on full charge since then. Taylor coming to 32 laps to go. He can go about 5 more laps. So looking to be around as far as lap 20 or 27 laps to go before we see the peel off.
Yeah, what I'm interested in seeing is where Taylor is going to be coming out of the pits within this multi-lap down, just absolute traffic that we have going around the circuit right now. How is that going to compare to Beyond? Is he going to be able to make up the time that he lost to Beyond before Beyond jived to the pits?
Time's ticking when it comes to Wayne Taylor. Jonathan Beyond, both right now fighting for their first career Major Series victories. For those just tuning in, under 32 laps to go, coming at 31 to go. In the window for final pit stops, Beyond already completed service after flipping upside down after trying to get around lap traffic. That put him off cycle, but just inside the money mark by 2 laps. He elected to come down at 44 laps to go. Right now, he's 52, 53 seconds behind Taylor. They're the only 2 on the lead lap. Rory Witherington also just came in. After his several troubles in the last stint or so, he takes his money stop this time. So time is ticking for Wayne Taylor. Leon once again right behind. Leon has made it clear he likes to keep the tempo high, even as a lap car, even though he's already 3rd spot. We'll see when the indication comes in for Taylor here. Right now, he can go up to 3 more laps if wanting.
Yeah, let's not forget that Dance is still circling back there in 4th.
He's already said this time.
Here's where the excitement happens, people.
30 laps to go. Taylor is in. This to determine how the final run plays out between Beyond and Taylor.
Yeah. Beyond is still in the back part of the track, so he's got a lot of track he still has to get through before he's going to be able to get to Taylor. But what's important to also remember, dear viewer, is that Taylor is going to have to get his tires up to 10, while Beyond's going to be able, has really nice hot 15 lap old tires. So while Beyond might have the advantage whenever these two come back together, it's going to be close coming to the end of this race.
Taylor's just gone off the jacks now. Beyond, still behind. Traffic is going down the front straight. Taylor.
It's going to be close.
Taylor's now exiting the pit lane. Where will the delta be? Beyond closing up 4 seconds, under 4 seconds. Taylor gets the lead on the overcut by 3.7 seconds, but Beyond still has the momentum.
Smart of the driver of the 21 Ford Mustang there, just to get out of the way, just to like, okay, this is where the fight for the lead is. I don't want any part of this.
This becomes a true test once again. Remember, Beyond lost 2-3 seconds when he initially got on the tires. Does Taylor have the same effect? Or does Taylor run away on the fresh boots? Little bit safer on the entry. Beyond closes up a couple tenths, heading to the final sector.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of clear air in front of both of these drivers, so this really is going to be a battle between these two for the win. Beyond locking up a little bit going into turn 12 there.
That was McPherson off the track, by the way, for those curious. Still outside drafting distance. That may be the biggest difference here. If Beyond can find a way to get within the draft, that may be the one play here.
Yeah, it's also important to remember that...
Oh, no! He cut the corner to turn 2 and 3. Beyond cuts the corner, and now he has to serve a slowdown.
The point I was about to make was that Beyond has been better in traffic than Taylor has been, and there's quite the gaggle of cars that are in front of these two drivers right now. But Beyond, that mistake is going to cost him. Not sure if he's able to get caught back up to Taylor before his tires really start to fall off.
And Beyond just had to nearly come to a full stop. That's why the interval just dropped 3/4 seconds. Jonathan Beyond has gone from within 3.5 seconds to more than 7 seconds behind the race leader in Taylor.
Yep. Less than 30 laps to go in tonight's race. I'm not going to say that it is over, but it's certainly looking like Taylor has the advantage over Beyond right now.
And with traffic starting to play a factor and mistakes coming into play, more than 2.5 hours of racing comes down to the final 27.5 laps. It's Wayne Taylor looking for his first major series victory. We'll be back in just a moment. You're watching Grid Vision.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series in officially licensed cars engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Hey, you know that guy who just before the green flag keys up his mic and asks, "Anybody got a setup?" Well, this is him. This is Adam, and hey, Adam needs some help. On the other hand, this guy over here, this is Steve. Steve is a solid racer and he knows his way around the garage. Steve's problem is time. With a job and a family, he can't find enough time to build competitive setups and to race as often as he likes. But as luck would have it, Steve knows a secret. He lets the Majors Garage crew chiefs do the setup work, so he can focus on the racing. At majorsgarage.com, Steve can get setups for over 60 cars on the iRacing service. So no matter what series he wants to jump into, he is covered. Somebody, anybody, really should tell Adam. See you at the garage.
Welcome back to Grid Vision for more coverage of the Major Series. Second split of the Pacific region. As the Sandown 500 reaches its final stages. Just Prince Ben Williams, Austin Jarvishar with you as we get ready for the final 24 laps. Wayne Taylor, it's his world so far. He's led 98 laps out of the 138. Let's take a look at some replays while we were away. More troubles for some of the drivers like Tolson. Plenty of issues today going down the hillside. Troyson this time hits the Armco as a result of all that. He's still going in the race, although he is in the pit lane with multiple minutes of damage. Some of the other incidents include things like this one. This is Greg McElroy from Seattle, Washington. And off the track goes the Forge car, Ben.
Yes. Have another replay here. Back with our buddy McPherson, who has been through the elephant this race, but he's still going. Unfortunately, gets the braking wrong for turn 4 just a little bit and spins it the whole way around into the Onco and has to tow back to the pits.
He is still in the race as well.
Yes. On board here with Sebastian Jackson going down the back straight here. Gets a little bit on the curb and, yeah, spins it almost the whole way around. Almost got a perfect J-turn there. And fortunately, yep, little kiss the tire wall and back going down the front straight.
An interesting way to do a J-turn. Mark Whitaker. He needed a solid race tonight for the points. It's not been that night. Turn 1 again. Off the track. And look, his teammate followed him.
That's what you call sympathetic driving, ladies and gentlemen.
Adam Johnson. He too goes down the hill. He too tries to learn turn 9. He too nearly heads to the fire truck. Also,
now
Jason
we're
McSpearon.
on board with Jason McSpearon coming on the turn 11. Oh, changing over to Richard McCoy, who, spins it. Keeps it off the wall, though. It's able to get on the brakes and keeps it from going into the wall, gets going back the right direction. On board now with Stein. Stein from the Into the Apex podcast coming down to turn 11 here, puts it up at the curb, and yep, spins it right around like we've seen many drivers having incidents with that corner this evening. Does it a little bit better than some of the other drivers and gets it going back straight without kissing the tire wall.
And that concludes our greatest hits away while we have an incident. Now, to give yourself a small plug, you do have a big podcast. After all, you're part of the Simcast, which is a part of Radio Show Le Mans in that respective network.
Yes. I've been working with Radio Le Mans for the past, almost 5 years now. What started as a podcast and a radio show that grew out of the managing staff of a Forza League, believe it or not. We have now gone to a weekly show from what used to be a monthly show, and we cover everything from iRacing to Rent Sports to R Factor 2. Particularly been discussing a lot of the recent news around motorsport games and their NASCAR title. We're also interested in seeing what's happening with the WEC title as well. We also do talk about hardware. We talk about various updates to titles, and we do occasionally go off topic, and by occasionally I mean often. So it is a really fun show that I really enjoy doing with my particular co-hosts, Louis Satterley and Taylor Burris, who I believe many people on this channel will be familiar with. We also have a UK team that we switch off on weeks on that is helmed by Matt Hunter and Stephen Wilson. So we usually have our episodes aired on the Radio Le Mans RS1 every Thursday at 8 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. Eastern. But you can also catch up on your podcast service of choice. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on a little bit of everything.
Yes, indeed. And definitely one of the podcasts you definitely want to listen about. And I'm not just saying that because I was also one of the guests of last week's edition.
Yes. Thank you again for jumping in at the last second when Taylor and Louis both had extenuating circumstances, which meant they could not make the recording of that episode. So, again, thank you for helping out.
Well, on that note, under 20 laps to go, 19 to go actually taken. Wayne Taylor is starting to fly. So it's not the tires, it's the car. Wayne Taylor, half a second quicker, in fact 7/10 quicker than beyond this time by the stripe.
Yeah, Bune might have to start looking back towards Dance, because Dance has been catching Bune over the last couple of laps. We're down to about a difference of 20 seconds, nearabouts. Definitely interested to see if Dance is able to close down that gap for the end of the race. He definitely has the time to do it if he's going to.
Yeah, that's going to be the tricky part when it comes to Dance's case, because, again, he's about another half a track behind them, or at least beyond. And how mighty things can change from getting turned across the entire field on the opening lap.
Yep, started from the near bottom, and now he's here in third place.
What was that, a Drake reference?
I mean, kind of. Please don't sue us. Yeah, while Dance might be able to catch, the question is, will he be able to make the pass?
That's going to be the huge question. Just got the word that every car is still running in split 1. 5 DNFs now in this split because, or 4 I should say, because Brett Trosen has just parked it. Ron McPherson Still scored behind him is yet to park as everyone nearly parked across each other's nose. And everybody is sending it for 14th, and there goes one more yellow car.
Oh, and we have another dog gear car in the turn 4 wall. I couldn't quite make out which one it was.
That
But
was
we're going to go to
Redeker.
the replay.
Let's take a look at all this. Adam Johnson sees a chance to be able to make a move. This is for position. Not anymore.
Yeah, well, Johnson might have been able to pull that move off. He literally hopped his car up over the curb, and it just unsettled him and spun him sideways.
Now, I'm not sure how Redeker got here, though.
I'm going to say brake lockup. Just based on how deep inside that corner he is.
Went off track twice, we're hearing, for a couple X's. There's one.
Ooh. Yep.
And pick up the R1 while you back up.
Yeah, Johnson wisely waiting for all the other cars around him to get back past him before rejoining the racing circuit.
In live action, Dan's trying to find a way to dance around the traffic still. McElready, 6 seconds back in the next position. Lets him on by again. And at this mark of the race, what's going through your mind if you've had a race where it's felt like a battle and you're now at the near 3-hour mark?
For me, which would the last time I would have been in a race this long, probably would have been the iRacing official 6 hours of Watkins Glen, where I elected to do 3 stints back to back to back to close out the race. And towards the end of the race, we had some incidents early in the race, so we were a lap down to first, but I was still the fastest car on track, so I was actually able to pass first and get my lap back. But if I was in a situation similar to like Hutchison, for example, where it's just been fighting for 3 hours just to make it back as much time as you can, at this point in the race, you're just kind of like, okay, there's 15 to go. I'm ready for this race to be over. This is one to forget about. And let's just get it across the line and not make any other errors.
Interestingly enough, no drivers have reached the incident limit, although it looked to be a potential possibility for some. Things have settled down.
I was about to ask, how close have we gotten?
Well, for the safety of drivers and for making sure everything's sportsmanlike, that's something that's not displayed for each driver unless you're in the race sim in itself. For those curious of why that's the case, it's as simple as, do you want a crew member to tell you, oh, hey, you're about to have this person incident point out, let's bump him, or something like that? It's the same reason why you can't see the exact temperatures on the gauges in some of the cars. Sebastian Jackson, by the way, spinning around. And one simple yep over the radio. McElready also having problems in that same period of time. And McElready's throttle apparently was starting to stick, hence what just happened to the 35. So let's take a look what happened. The 35 is now out of the race. Then McElready's throttle apparently stuck here.
Yeah, definitely not the best place on the track to have your throttle stick, particularly going through these tight turns towards the last sector here.
But as mentioned, Jackson parking as a result of the spin. Rich McClure is also now coming in because he's picked up a mandatory damage flag. Wayne Taylor coming up to 13 laps to go.
Taylor has really taken control of this race ever since he came out of the pits following his last stop. Bune has just continued to fall back. He's lost 15, 16 seconds ever since Taylor came out of the pits. Dance, as I alluded to earlier, is actually still catching him. We're down to a difference of about 16, 17 seconds now between those two drivers. So Dance still has a lot of time. A lot can happen in 13 laps. He might be able to leave this race with a second place.
Coming up to 12 to go. Yeah, that up the time, about 15 minutes of racing to work with. Not going to reach the time limit here today. But does need to make sure the laps are completed cleanly without any more trouble spots. For the most part for now, for the next few laps at least, clean space, and oh my goodness, that was Ken Leon who was off the track, nearly angled towards him.
Yeah, it looks like Leon just kind of locked his tire up as we're going to the replay here. It looked like he locked up a little bit coming into these last few corners of the last sector. Coming down into turn 11 here, just outbrakes himself, only just about spins it the whole way around, but he's able to get it back under control and heading down the right direction down the front straight.
Thank goodness for the new sand physics model, is all I can say to that.
Yes, had that been an incident that happened at a race 3 weeks ago now, as we're seeing the number 8 car half spin going into the last quarter here. Had that been a couple weeks ago, that would have ended quite differently.
Taylor chugs along. 11 more circuits around Sandown. Next up to deal with the traffic, Roger Shank, 8th place. That put him 2 laps down. Almost everybody except the top 3 has been lapped twice. Kind of astounding.
Yeah, and it goes to show you.
Wow, that's a way to let the leader go.
Interesting call there by Shank. Not sure I would have made that same decision, but it also goes to show you how much time Isaacs has lost. A car that was in 4th place, challenging Dance for 3rd for a while, is now down in 9th place and 2 laps down from our leaders.
I'm also curious about some of the battles. Was about to say Paulus and McSparrow was the closest battle, but McSparrow just about nearly spun the car. Outside of that, things have separated out. Fairly sizable per the car group. There's a look at Paulison. Amatsu's trying to zip bomb by towards McSparrow. Adam Johnson is within 6 seconds of trying to get to a spot despite the troubles. After all, he's proven he's a little bit higher than his I rating of 692 on a road course.
Wow, okay.
Hey, I once had a 50.
Yeah, he is not driving like 600, but we're going to come back to that 50 after this broadcast, Justin.
You think I'm joking? I've come a long way from averaging 10 incident points a race on oval.
Oh, it's just a normal oval race in some of the work license classes, which is why I'm still a D license. Anyway, going to a replay here, going on board with the number 8.
Don't tell me you got stuck in the wall again.
No, he did not get stuck in the wall again.
Keep going. Survey says
no. Oh.
Oh my God, he did it the same way.
Oh.
And Ray Partridge this time takes the toe. That's the second time Partridge has got himself stuck in the wall.
So what you're saying is we had a Partridge in the turn for a wall many times.
Just twice. Just in the exact way that gets you stuck in the wall.
Yeah, it's not Partridge. He's good. Thank you, Austin, for catching what I was laying down there. Anyway, Wayne Taylor, well out in front now. Bjorn has fallen back 20 seconds, probably more. 20. We're down to 28 seconds behind the leaders. Dance is really getting close to him now. We might want to start paying attention to the distance between those two. As we see another car backwards in turn 4.
Mertz again. And the adventure continues.
Yeah, Mertz watching the 8 car getting stuck in the same place the last lap, decided, hey, that was a neat trick. Let me try it.
And
Yeah.
it's not over yet. There's an attempt to rejoin.
Okay,
Has to back up for 4 cars. Here's the next chance for the flex spin. And welcome to the next battle. Oh, and Adam Johnson loses time. And that's how Johnson just lost 2 seconds.
Oh, dear. I'm sitting here with my hands on my head watching that clip, just nervous about how it's going to end.
I mean, I can hear the discussion back saying, where do I rejoin then? Anywhere is
Not
the answer.
there. Anywhere else but there.
7 to go.
Yeah. This, at this point, is Taylor's to lose. At this point, I believe.
Yeah, he's not had any major off tracks today. He's had some damage on the sides from lap traffic, yes. He even hit the wall before the pit stops. But even when you factor in, he's the one who's limited the most mistakes, because beyond, we might be talking about a completely different race if there was the contact from before.
Yeah. Had that contact from before for Beyond had not occurred, this would have been a very different last 30 laps of this race. Beyond that, they're still trucking. He's still circulating.
I still don't understand I still can't believe, rather, that he's still in second. But things have really fallen back, and Dance is within 7 seconds. Here's the thing. He needs to gain 7 seconds in 6 laps.
How's their lap times been comparing?
Well, the comparison, the past 5 laps, 1.5 seconds per lap gained by Dance.
So what you're saying is there's a chance.
There's a chance on the last lap if he keeps the average up.
We'll see what happens as he's making his way past the 70 Ford Mustang here.
That's Scrivener. He moves to the side. This time by the time differential. Another 3/10 picked up. That's not going to do it.
Yep. Looks like he's got a little bit of free air in front of him, so he might be able to make back some time to Dance this next coming lap. But he's going to have to push really hard if he wants that second position.
Taylor taking the 5 laps to go. 5 more times around here from Sandown. Historic race. An interesting endurance run here tonight. Wayne Taylor looks to cap it off. He's led the most laps with 117.
Yeah, Taylor with that standing start launch to get himself in the first place, being able to basically remove himself from a lap 1 accident that has seen many drivers, Dance included, much farther down the field than when they started. And Taylor has just been in control of this race the entire time. Sure, there was some difference when Young got back in front of him through traffic, and he's had some minor scrapes and bumps and bruises throughout the race, but this race has been Taylor's pretty much from the get-go.
It's been very, very quick all night long, especially when it comes to short and mid-run. It's been hard to touch him during those points of the race. Only 4 more circuits to close it out. Out of the race now, Ray Partridge is officially backed out. That leaves us with 23 running here at the finish. By the way, Dance has not closed up at the rate needed to close up to beyond. It's still 6.5 seconds between second and third. As they look to close things out in their respective races. 3.5 laps to go for the leader.
Yep. Taylor just needs to circle around this track a few more times, not make any mistakes, and he can finish this race out strong.
Up to the final section. And the pace hasn't fallen off all night. For the most part, he's been in the 109s, except for when it's the very tail end of the runs or massive amounts of traffic. And with the track cooling down to about the starting point, I'm not quite surprised we've seen the speed get to near the fastest laps of the race again. 3 to go. Listening through the gears, still a couple more lap cars to go.
Yep. Wayne Taylor started this race in 3rd place on the grid. He qualifying only, let's call that 1.163 off of Dance in 1st place. Dance with that first lap trouble has allowed Taylor just to pull away and to keep his lead up through most of this race, leading the most laps and being able to finish off these last 3 laps strong.
He only has 2 more circuits to complete his first ever Major Series victory. 1 more lap car to do with Timothy Klaus. Klaus already trying to find a way to let him on by.
Yep, Klaus going very far off to the other side of the circuit to allow Taylor to have the preferred line into turn 1.
What a night it's been. Just 1 start this season for Wayne Taylor, by the way, coming into tonight. He finished in the top 5 that race. This is his 20th Major Series start. Lap and a half to go to win number 1 in the Major Series and to get it done at a home track. Lap traffic not expected to be a factor for the closing lap. Nearest cars about 15-20 car lengths up the track.
All Taylor has to do is just go through 13 more corners.
Clouds over the racetrack. White flag is out. Final time around here on Grid Vision. Taylor leading by almost 32 seconds. Looks to cap it off.
Looks like Dance is not quite going to catch up to Bjorn. Is going to have to settle for 3rd place.
Solid recovery for him. A solid recovery for Beyond. Though it could have been the chance for the win. But in terms of racing, there's no space for what could have been. For Wayne Taylor, made 1 previous start this season, got himself a top 5 run. Previously was a pro driver in the international split. His far back as 2019 and 2020, returned back to the Major Series this season. But in Career Start 20, all the pieces come together. Checkered flag waves. Wayne Taylor, for the first time in his Major Series career, is a winner. He gets it done at his home track of Sandown. He gets it done in the Supercars. Second spot, Jonathan Beyond looking to close it up. Dance still within 5 seconds of him. More cars off the track. Mark Redeker, Amonso struggling to get to the checker flag. But 019 surviving the feat of getting to the checker flag. A 1-2 for Middle Finger Racing. Jonathan Dance coming away in third spot. Leon, the first one a lap down. And Redeker appears to be out of gas. Others like Patrick Stein look to close it out with an 11th place run. And several more zip on by. Paulison getting in a drag race for McSpiron for 12, not able to beat it. McSpiron to 13th in the end.
Yep, congratulations to all of our finishers on this really nearly 4-hour run. But congratulations especially to our winner, Taylor, who was able, despite all of the issues that he had getting through traffic, to be able to take home his first win in the Masters.
Mark Redeker still yet to finish. He's only got 5 seconds to cross the line. He can't do it. Redeker loses a lap at the end, but still finishes 23rd. But you know what that means? Wayne Taylor celebration time. Wayne Taylor picks up the win in the Sandown 500. And somebody tell Ryan Steele his teammate cannot officially finish the race because the timer ran out.
Still good for teammates to help each other out there, but it is now time to destroy some tires.
Wayne Taylor with a 1-2 team finish picks up the victory tonight. Let's take a look at the unofficial race results here from Sandown. 31.9 seconds the difference between him and his teammate. Jonathan Dance finishes third. Leon and Witherington the top 5. Hutchinson and Klaus, along with Shank and Isaacs, and Ryan Steele rounding out your top 10, Ben.
Yep. Going down from 11th place, we have Stein, followed by Stephen Paulson, Jason Sparrow, Adam Johnson, Greg Fernie, Don Parks, Bryce Roberts, and Phil Otto in 18th. 19th we have, sorry, I read that wrong. In 19th we have Richard McClure, followed by Don Donaldson in 20th.
Donaldson indeed in 20th position. Then it's Scribner, followed by Mertz, Redeker, Partridge, and McPherson. Jackson 26th. Trollson, Diggs, Coatley, and Fletcher. Keep in mind about Jackson on back DNF. Partridge also did not finish the race. So celebration time continues in the backdrop. Take one more step aside. Post-race coverage coming up in just a moment. You're watching the Major Series from iRacing's virtual Sandown International Motor Raceway here in Australia. Welcome back to Grid Vision for post-race coverage for the Major Series and its Pacific Split 2 action. And what was a busy night, brought to you in part by Beyond Blue. For more information on the charity Beyond Blue, go to beyondblue.org.au. Justin Prince, alongside Ben Williams, alongside Austin Derbyshire, as Wayne Taylor tried to run the tank dry. Your thoughts on how tonight played out? A team 1-2, but a first-time winner in Wayne Taylor tonight in just his 20th major start.
Yeah, I feel for Beyond. He was definitely had the pace to be able to run up front. Had great drives through the traffic to be able to press his advantage against his teammate, but just that unfortunate incident just knocked him back, and he was. While he did recover the second, he never was fully able to catch back up to his teammate.
And in turn, when you talk about the race tonight, we do have to say some drivers did get tight on the incident points. Only one driver passed the incident limit in Damian Colty with 63 in the entire 2 splits tonight. Outside of that, these drivers able to take a lot of bumping and banging, it seemed.
Yeah. Not surprised, definitely at a narrow track like Sandown. There was bound to be some door-to-door action that we definitely saw in this split, which I can imagine there was also some similar incidents in split 1 as well.
And in turn tonight, how in turn do you feel tonight plays into that championship factor? Because we talked about how close some of the battles are. Just 2 races to go in the Majors calendar for 2023. And they're not going to get any easier. You're talking about 1987 cars at North Wilkesboro, where short tracks have been a tricky spot in the past in the series. But also, you're talking about the current Formula 1 cars at the British GP circuit at Silverstone.
Yeah, we're very much entering the, and now for something completely different territory with the next couple of rounds. Definitely could be interesting to see what happens in the silver category, the sports silver. As we talked about at the top of the broadcast, the Pacific region, you had the overall leader Shane Vickery starting in the split above Isaacs going into tonight's round, but unfortunately Isaacs had such a poor race that it looks like Fisker is going to be able to pull away further in that championship.
When you're talking about the finish, indeed, you're talking about the finishing order in that regard. It could have been much better in that regard. Keep in mind, Shane Vickery 27th in the split above. We'll see how the points differential plays out once things factor in. Once again, let's take a look at what's coming up on the schedule here on Grid Vision. We mentioned a couple more races to go tomorrow. A busy schedule continues into, well, another busy week. So 2 more broadcasts tomorrow for the GRL as well as RGR. But Monday starts things off with Grid Vision Super Speedways. Then Champion heads to Bristol. See how it survives the last great Coliseum. Also a new series, the SSRL Truck Series gets ready for its second ever race at Charlotte, followed by NAS Open, also from Charlotte, but the Roval. And don't forget about GRL because they get their own run at Charlotte, followed by the Chase with Kaiwu Cup with its own run at Charlotte, all within the next week. A very busy schedule, once again, here on Grid Vision for the 2nd to 8th of October. But on that note, as we start off the month of October with the early times now, I'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's coverage of the Major Series and its Pacific Region's second split. For my colleague tonight, Ben Williams, for Austin Derbyshire, I'm Justin Prince saying so long to the rest of your day or evening. You've been watching the Major Series. Congratulations to a first-time winner, Wayne Taylor, the winner of the Sandown 500.